Good evening, everyone. We're continuing this special council meeting this evening. And members of council, we are going to start off with item number 3, River Road Neighborhood Planning Study Options, and then we'll move through the rest of the agenda. We do have one presentation this evening, Elaine Brunshaw, our Chief Planner. Welcome, Elaine.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council, staff, and the public. I'm here tonight to present some planning study options for the River Road area in light of some development interest that we've been receiving in the City of Cambridge. This area predominantly has a rural character. We have a planning application for a townhouse development on property addressed as 340 to 360 River Road. That application has gone through a public meeting, and we are in the process of receiving public feedback. We've received a number of comments and concerns from citizens about how the neighborhood is changing, how the area might be serviced, and how to deal with transportation matters in the broader area. Based upon discussions with the ward councillor, we're now presenting options for you this evening about how to further evaluate possibilities of infilling development in this area. The first option that we were asked to explore was an interim control bylaw. The Planning Act allows municipalities to pass an interim control bylaw to freeze development on land for a period of up to 1 year while a planning study is being undertaken. In the report tonight is a sample interim control bylaw that can apply to the River Road area. The intention is that if an interim control bylaw is passed by council, then a planning study will be undertaken to look at land uses, how to look at the scale and density and size of developments, and very importantly, how to look at servicing the area. And that would be done through a master environmental servicing plan, which is carried out under the Environmental Assessment Act. So those two pieces of work would occur at the same period of time. The pros of this approach is that it freezes development so that we're not dealing with a number of different development pressures while those important studies are underway. The outcome of those studies will identify a preferred approach for dealing with development and servicing in the area, and the work would need to be done within 1 year unless council approves an extension of the bylaw for up to an additional year. An interim control bylaw can be appealed by the Minister of Housing, and the extension for an additional year can be appealed by anybody. The cons of this approach is that it has significant impacts on property rights, and the interim control bylaw may not actually be required because there are holding provisions on the zoning of lands in this area. So council already has control about determining when and where development should occur. The cost of undertaking the study and the environmental assessment could range from about $75,000 to $100,000. Second option, which is recommended by staff, is to proceed with the two studies that I spoke about, the land use planning study and the master environmental servicing plan, and not proceed with an interim control bylaw. The reason for that is because of the holding provisions already being in place, planning applications needing to come to council for consideration and a decision, and that provides a lot of flexibility for us to also work with developers and the surrounding community on coming up with development concepts that are suitable for the area. The third option is to take the work that is already included in the citywide draft zoning bylaw that was subject of a public meeting on June 11th in front of Committee of Planning and Development, and refine those standards for the River Road area based upon the feedback that we've been receiving from the public to date. This can be done as part of the ongoing citywide zoning bylaw, and the downside of this approach is that it would not include a servicing strategy, which is needed for the area. The fourth option is business as usual. Carry on with planning applications as they come in, work with developers, the ward councillor, Planning and Development Committee, and residents to come up with concepts that are appropriate for the area. We have that current development application that I spoke about from 340 to 360 River Road. That land is not recommended for inclusion within an interim control bylaw should council deem it necessary to pass a bylaw. The reason for that is the application is well underway, and it would not be acting in good faith if we were to proceed with an interim control bylaw for those lands. So again, the reason that the interim control bylaw is in front of council is if council chooses option 1 to pass the bylaw, it's time sensitive because as soon as there's discussion about an interim control bylaw and people understand that there is a potential for a development freeze, then people would be hurrying to get applications in if council postponed passing an interim control bylaw. So again, in summary, staff feel confident that we can proceed with the required studies in this area without the need for council passing an interim control bylaw. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much, and no surprise, we'll have questions from members of council. Councillor Wolf.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for the report. In option 3, I like the fact that the area should have site-specific standards that reflect the character of the neighborhood. Could that also be done with option 2?
The question regarding whether we could include customized zoning through the planning study definitely could be looked at through option 2 as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mann.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you. Thanks for the presentation, Elaine. When you talked about the options, you said that option 1 was $75,000 to $100,000. Option 2 would be the same. Option 3 would be a cost that we would absorb as a city.
Thank you, Councillor Mann. That's a good question. So through you, Madam Mayor, yes, for option 2, the cost would be $75,000 to $100,000 because the same studies are required. Option 3, this would be captured under the current consulting budget for preparation of the citywide zoning bylaw. So there would be no additional cost, but there would be staff resources needed to complete that work.
Thank you. And as a follow-up, please. And for option 2, Elaine, the holding that would be on the H holding would be option 2. How long could we keep that on hold? The interim control bylaw gives us a year. Does the holding pattern give us longer than a year?
Madam Mayor, through you, the question was how long could the holding provision remain in place? Well, the holding provision has been in place since 1985 when the citywide zoning bylaw first came into effect. The reason for the holding provision is because the area isn't currently serviced, and if development was going to proceed, servicing has to be extended to the properties. The holding provisions have to be lifted by council passing a subsequent bylaw before development could proceed. So it really depends on, again, the timing of servicing, and we feel that it's important to look at servicing options and approaches comprehensively because there are some larger lots in that particular area and there are opportunities for infilling development. So again, it's important to take a comprehensive look at how that whole area can be serviced.
Thank you. And if I can, just one more, Madam Chair, I promise this is it. So Elaine, if we put the option 2 gives us a longer time frame to work with this piece of property than option 1, am I correct?
In terms of timing, we anticipate that it could take a year to complete the planning work and the environmental work. That's a best case scenario. If issues arise, it could take more time. If at the end of the completion of the environmental assessment and there's council endorsement for the servicing strategy, there's a possibility that if someone is not satisfied, they can approach the Provincial Ministry of Environment, Culture and Parks and ask for a bump up. All of those things are unknown, but we know that there's an important need to get the answers to how to service this area quickly, and we would move quickly with either option 1 or 2.
Thanks, Elaine.
Thank you. Councillor Liggett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Elaine, option 2 says that development applications, we are obligated to process them anyway under option 2. But option 1, I just want to make sure I'm correct on this. Option 1 means we don't process them at all because there's the interim control bylaw.
Madam Mayor, that is correct. The interim control bylaw explicitly says that apart from a few minor exceptions, small additions, decks, accessory buildings to existing houses on that portion of the street, no new development is permitted. So that gives a basis for city staff to advise landowners that we would not even take in larger development applications while the interim control bylaw is in place. Under option 2, we would be taking in planning applications, though.
Follow up, please. So in option 2, we'd still have to process those, and they could take us to the land planning appeal tribunal if we did not, through delays. So I'm trying to figure out why option 2 would be the recommendation of staff if it's going to put us into a detrimental position.
Again, Madam Mayor, because there are holding provisions in place, servicing has to be dealt with comprehensively, so it either gets dealt with by each individual developer coming forward trying to fit their proposal into the scheme for surrounding lands, and that's a fundamental requirement of any development application within the City of Cambridge. Again, but Council has the authority to choose when it's appropriate to lift the holding provision, but if the developers can come forward with a servicing scheme that works and doesn't detrimentally compromise the development of surrounding lands, then staff would likely be supportive of moving forward with an application. But we want to work very collaboratively with landowners in that area to come up with servicing solutions.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments from members of council? Seeing none, thank you very much for your presentation. Councillor Devine, I believe, oh, did you want to speak to this now? Can we put the motion on the floor? I'm going to take a comment from Councillor Montero and then yourself. Councillor Montero.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to hear from the ward councillor what he sees this. He's been dealing with the people that live in the area. I'd like to hear from the ward councillor as to what he has to say, what he's heard from the people in this area.
Thank you. I was going to ask for his comments after he puts a motion on the floor. Councillor Devine.
Yes, and thank you, through the chair. All right, the motion, seconded by Councillor Reid. River Road Neighborhood Planning Study Options, Report 19-202CD, River Road Planning Study Options Received. And that Council directs staff to pursue option 1 on the River Road situation, and further that Council directs staff prepare detailed terms of reference for the land use and servicing study and provide for Council for information in future. Now this, and I reserve the right to speak last as well, Mayor McGarry. The River Road is one of the unique areas in our community. It's a beautiful area. It borders on a cultural heritage landscape. It drops into a river valley. It's a rural area, and I do believe it is in need of some controlled development. As ward councillor, I'm very, very concerned about it being piecemealed by, this property owner, that property owner. I would like a comprehensive study done with the interim bylaw, and come up with a proper plan and a proper study for our River Road development. It is going to be developed. It's not going to stay the way it is. I have no bones about it. River Road will be developed, and if you drive down River Road, there's a fair bit of property through that area. A lot of property. This does not include, this interim control bylaw would not include 340 to 360 River Road. That development application is already in. It's through Reed's Heritage Homes. We've had a lot of discussion with them on that, some very good discussion, by the way. So this would not be included in that. So I'm asking council to pass this motion. This is a sensitive area, and we need to be respectful of the area. And the other thing that clearly I would like to see is some trails down through there. some active use trails. So, and as people may not be aware, once you get out in River Road, there's no services. There's no water, there's no sewage. So again, this would be part of it, the study that the city would do. And I'm asking council to pass this. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaking to the motion, Councillor Adshade.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I agree with Councillor Devine in option 1. This is a very unique area. It's a rural area. I think it's going to be developed, but it's such a unique and there's a lot of heritage, and it's an area where I really think we need to plan and look at and study. Also, too, as Councillor Devine pointed out, there's no city services out there right now. So before we get too many applications going through, I think it's really important we take a look at that. And 1 year is not a long time. I don't have a problem holding it for 1 year to try to get this study completed. So I'm in support of Councillor Devine's option 1 option.
Thank you. Councillor Liggett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree that this is a unique area. I also agree with option 1 and because of that, but I also understand the strength in an interim control bylaw and the dangers in that. But more than those items is the ward councillor for this area knows that, actually both the ward councillors up in that area know this area well. And if Councillor Devine feels this needs to be protected, then it needs to be. He doesn't make these decisions lightly. He doesn't take any of his job lightly. And I think that we need to have our vote in support of him and what he thinks is necessary for his ward when it comes to this sort of thing. So I will support him on option number 1 with no problem.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments from members of council? Councillor Wolf.
Through you, Madam Chair, I'll also support option 1 and with the understanding that the area could have site-specific standards that reflect the character of the neighborhood, which could be achieved in option 1. Because I think, to me, that's an essential part of what we're trying to do to maintain this unique community.
Thank you. We move next to Councillor Mann.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you. I really appreciate the work that staff have done on this and the presentation that they have made this evening, giving us these 4 options. And I too know the area well. It wasn't that long ago that I grew up out there.
Last week, Mike.
It's not a laughing matter.
And I still remember. But it is a very unique part of our community, and I think it's something that, as Councillor Devine has said, that development is going to take place there, but we need to make sure that we take the time to do it right, and option 1 is what he would prefer, and I would support that, and I know that option 2 would do the same thing, but I will support the motion as presented tonight.
Thank you, young councillor. Councillor Mehta.
Well, thank you, Your Worship. I'll echo a lot of the comments made today. I'm fully in support of this. I believe it's a unique area as well. And it's also, again, one of the gateways into our beautiful city, and it's worth preserving as much as we can. So it's got my support. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from members of council? Councillor Devine.
Yeah, I would really like to thank staff for all the hard work they've done on this file. There was a lot of work done quickly over a 2-week period. They did a lot of research, did a lot of work, as well as the legal department has done a great job. So I'd really like to thank staff for what they've done. And can we have a recorded vote, please?
Thank you. If there's no other questions or comments, I'm going to call the vote. It's a recorded vote. All those in favor of the motion? And that motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Now we'll move forward with the rest of the agenda, and our interim city manager, Jeff Wilmore, will provide opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor, and good evening, everyone. The two reports that remain on the agenda tonight are related to each other, but they are separate reports. The first one is recommending terms of reference for the proposed Community Wellbeing Advisory Committee. Now, this was one outcome of the Community Outreach Task Force from 2017-18, and it was also the subject of a report to Council about a month ago. The second report is recommending that we initiate the process to identify a consumption and treatment services site in Cambridge. So the two reports are related because the Wellbeing Advisory Committee would help to inform the consultation process for the CTS site selection. But they are separate, and I would suggest that Council can and should deal with the first one, the Advisory Committee first, because regardless of what choice you may make on the Consumption and Treatment Services report, the Community Advisory Committee, or the Advisory Committee on Wellbeing, stands on its own, and that group has quite a bit of work to do separate and apart from the CTS process. So I would ask Vanessa Lopak to make introductory comments on the Advisory Committee report, and then suggest that Council can hear from delegations and to deal with that matter.
Thank you. Welcome, Vanessa.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of Council, city staff, and members of the public. So I'm Vanessa Lopak, and I'm the Supervisor of Accessibility and Diversity Services here at the city. And I'm pleased to present to you tonight a follow-up from that May 21st report on the Community Outreach Task Force. In that report, Council approved exploring the establishment of an advisory committee to advise Council on future directions with respect to community well-being in the City of Cambridge. So as such, we have drafted the proposed terms of references in front of you tonight for consideration for the Community Wellbeing Advisory Committee. Using the guiding principles of engage, empower, and educate, the proposed Community Wellbeing Advisory Committee will have the mandate to explore complex social issues and provide actionable advice to Council and staff on the development of integrated community programs and strategies to address those issues. These include concerns related to homelessness, mental health, addiction, poverty, safety, and inclusion for the people of Cambridge. To draft these terms of reference, we connected with local community leaders and organizations, as well as taking into consideration the feedback that we receive from citizens on this committee, to learn from their experiences in engaging with the city and figure out how we can strategically set this committee up to be effective in its mandate with a membership that ensures respectful and diverse perspectives from residents who can help develop the city's role in facing these complex issues affecting our community. So as such, the Community Wellbeing Advisory Committee will be responsible for developing and reporting on an annual work plan detailing their tasks and actions. They will help Council become aware of and create an integrated response to social issues and current situations, and work in partnerships, including engaging residents and those with lived experience to identify the strengths, capacities, and needs of residents in our community and inform future actions. This committee will work to identify opportunities for innovative and locally driven solutions over the short, medium, and longer term, communicate with the public, and advocate with various levels of government to raise awareness and promote changes, and ultimately will advise Council on the implementation of relevant city actions, programs, or strategies related to the committee's mandate. Membership will be comprised of voting and non-voting members. Voting members will include Council representatives and up to 14 citizen appointees who must live, work, or receive services in Cambridge. We proposed these criteria in response to feedback we heard to ensuring that the people of Cambridge who are impacted the most by these issues make up the membership. And specifically, the criteria of those who receive services in Cambridge is intended to be inclusive of people with lived experience, past or present, particularly if they don't have an address but are connected with some of our local services. Non-voting members will be representatives from organizations including Waterloo Regional Police Services, Crime Prevention Council, Public Health and Community Services, as well as a member of our senior leadership here at the city. These non-voting members will be resources to the committee, providing an organizational perspective to members as they advise council, as well as providing a link back to their organizations on the committee's findings and recommendations. Once approved, recruitment for membership will begin June 20th and will close after 3 weeks on July 11th. We will advertise membership recruitment through media release, connecting directly with previous members from the Mayor's Outreach Task Force, and connecting with local agencies who serve people with lived experience. In addition, these application forms are available on the city's website for anyone to apply, and can also be picked up in person at City Hall. Appointments will be reviewed and recommended by Striking Committee as per the Advisory Committee bylaw, with the aim to have membership appointed by Council on July 23rd. Once approved, we'll consult with the Mayor's office to determine the frequency and timing of meetings, and we'll aim to have the first meeting of the Community Wellbeing Advisory Committee in September of 2019. We expect the committee to require an operating budget of $5,000 to cover committee activities such as arranging for site visits or other research and engaging activities, as well as to meet the needs of members who may experience barriers in participating in the committee such as this. That might include bus tickets for those who might need transit to get to meetings, or providing accessibility accommodations as needed. Staffing, including planning and administration support for the committee, will be provided through existing operating budgets. So while many of the services and strategies addressing poverty, homelessness, and addiction in public safety are the mandates of other levels of government, we recognize that the city has a role to play in engaging residents, community groups, service organizations, and other partners to help address these complex issues here in our community. The proposed advisory committee can provide an avenue to bringing these partners together, identify whose perspectives might be missing from the discussion and to bring them in, and provide accurate and informed made-in-Cambridge advice to council and partner organizations as we understand and innovate to address the issues that resonate with the people of Cambridge. So thank you for your consideration tonight.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I'm going to see if there's any questions or comments from members of council. Councillor Liggett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Vanessa, when I look at the makeup of who's supposed to be on this committee, I'm troubled by the fact that there's no, you speak here on page 6 about engaging, we recognize that we have a role in engaging residents, but I don't see residents without the lived experience on this. We have become a very polarized community because of lack of communication, because of lack of transparency, because we're just on opposite sides. And I just see this being very divisive. I see the community not accepting this committee because the greater community will feel left out of the equation once again. And they spoke loud and clear at the last meeting when this first came before us, and they spoke about exactly that. So I'm wondering why, once again, the residents of this community, their feelings are not going to be addressed by the committee themselves because they're not members. And the same thing happened with the Mayor's Task Force, which I sat on. Exactly the same thing happened. And it just went offside, everything about it. Well, besides the quantity of people sat on there, it was obvious it wasn't going to go anywhere, it wasn't going to work at all. So I'm wondering why this direction has been taken.
Okay, through you, Madam Mayor. When we talk about folks who are directly impacted by these issues, it can be impacted in a number of different ways. I think that we haven't specifically identified a particular way that somebody might have been impacted by them. So it is certainly open to any resident of Cambridge to apply.
Follow up? Okay, but this report doesn't make that clear when they say open to any residents. As a matter of fact, it seems to go the opposite way. And I just want to make sure that people who are not affected by homelessness now, I mean, they may have been in the past, but let's say they aren't now, or have come from some of these places, I want to make sure that they are also accepted as applicants and that they understand that they have an equal value in applying for this committee. So you're saying then that they have an equal opportunity despite what I'm sensing from this report? I know it's going to be us choosing, but I want to make sure that we all agree that everybody has equality coming to the table here. So that's what you're saying?
Through
Okay.
you, Madam Mayor, yes, I believe that is what I'm saying.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I'll get back to you. In the terms of reference, it does talk about 14 citizen appointees who must live, work, or receive services in Cambridge, 2 council reps, the mayor of the city of Cambridge. So we might just massage the wording, but I didn't read it as Councillor Leggett did. I think that we have a staff member that wanted to weigh in. Just one moment.
Through you, Your Worship. That's correct. The application process goes through the striking committee, so it's open to residents of the community, regardless of their affiliations. They can apply to the process, and the striking committee, as with all of our committees, will come together and select the members for that committee.
Thank you. Councillor Liggett again.
Yes, but so I guess where I'm troubled is under 6A, when it says appointees will be selected based on their knowledge and lived experience of priority issues, including but not limited to poverty, homeless, and everything. To me, that becomes exclusive of people who haven't had those problems. So I just want to make sure, going forward, that nobody can backtrack and say, well, that's not what we voted for. So as long as we're clear and we can fix that wording to include it.
Yeah, I believe it's just in the wording.
I can elaborate.
Our interim city manager has a word about this.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would reinforce what Vanessa had said, that certainly it's open to all, and to reassure councillors, public safety is also on that list. And so when people have knowledge, lived experience based on public safety, that would be open to everyone. I think we all experience that in the community, and people who are passionate enough about it to want to apply to be on this committee probably have maybe a more significant connection with public safety matters.
Thank you. Councillor Mann.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you, my first question's already been answered, but Vanessa, as I read through this, especially the responsibilities and opportunities, we talk about developing a work plan, being aware of and creating an integrated response, work in partnership and in-depth understanding, to engage the community, to identify opportunities and communicate with the public and advocate with the region, and to advise council about the implementation of relevant city actions, programs, and services. So I just want to emphasize that this is an advisory committee, not a decision-making committee about where or what or anything else, but a conduit to provide that information back to council and out to the public. So what we're deciding tonight is, do we accept these terms of reference for a committee that is going to keep the city, our citizens, and council informed of what's going on in our community? Is that right?
Through you, Madam Mayor, yes, that's correct.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Devine.
Yes, thank you, the Chair. Vanessa, thanks for all the work you've done. You've done a lot of work on this file. Question, under 6, composition, and this is in the terms of reference, by the way. It says 14 citizen appointees must live, work, or receive services in Cambridge. Can you explain to me what we mean by or receive services in Cambridge? Can you explain that to me, please? I'm a little unsure.
Through you, Madam Mayor, the intention of the criteria of receiving services in Cambridge is to be inclusive of folks who might not have an address. but they might be connected with a service provider or an organization in Cambridge otherwise, so we can still be open to folks with current lived experience.
Okay, so that doesn't mean we could have somebody from living in Guelph that receives services here, that goes to the doctor here, that might get their hair cut here, might shop here? Because that's what it reads to me, receive services.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I would suggest that all the appointees are made through striking committee, and that would be a consideration through striking committee.
Well, I think we need to talk about that too, because this is a very important committee. Okay, very, very important committee. The striking committee normally appoints people, but I do believe council should be appointing these people like we have in the past with other major committees, and I'll talk about that when we go do the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Devine. I'm going to ask the clerk to respond to the questions about the striking committee.
So through you, Your Worship, our striking committee bylaw actually indicates that we give preference to those who live in the city of Cambridge. And just to give you a little bit of a background on our striking committee, it is a committee of council. It's made up of our 4 chairs. So our chair from the Budget and Audit Committee, the chair from the General Committee, the Planning and Development Committee, our mayor and our acting mayor, and then we have 2 councillor members that assist on a rotating basis. So all the applications that we will be receiving will be reviewed by this committee. They will appoint citizens, and then it is rectified at council.
You may. Councillor Devine.
I believe last November, December, might have been January, that there was a motion passed to rotate the councillors that go on the striking committee, just like we rotate the mayor. Now, the striking committee has not done all the appointments. They have not done all the appointments because when we did the appointments for the Sportsplex on the property, on the looking for property, those people were appointed by City Council, not the striking committee. And I will make a motion when the motion comes up. These people should be appointed by the entire council. This is important to the city. I'll do it when we get to the motion. I don't know if we're going to do it now.
Just to clarify, the multiplex was not part of that advisory committee bylaw, and at this point, the people who will be appointed to this committee will be rectified or ratified by council. So you will be able to make a decision on it.
Okay, seeing no further questions or comments, thank you very much for your presentation. Just as we get going with our delegation list, I thought I would put delegations first? We have a delegation first.
Yes, one delegation.
Yeah, I haven't forgotten about it, promise. We'll do delegations, and before I move forward with asking a delegation to come, just a reminder to delegations, for all delegates coming forward, please ensure that your comments are respectful and directed to the topic listed on the agenda. And I will also remind those in the public gallery of our code of conduct. It remains in effect with every single council committee and other meetings here. During the code of conduct, we also make sure that this is a respectful place for people with opposite opinions to come to our podium and not feel intimidated. In that light, no applause is allowed in this chamber. So with that being said, I will call forward our delegation, which is Angela Raposo. Welcome, Angela.
Thank you, Vanessa, for your presentation. And good evening, Madam Chair, councillors, members of staff, and members of the public. My name is Angela Raposo, and I am here representing Cambridge Safe and Strong in regards to the new Community Wellbeing Advisory Committee. A few weeks back, Cambridge Safe and Strong came forward and supported the notion of a Community Wellbeing Advisory Committee. We noted the importance of such a committee to include Cambridge residents. The 3 guiding principles of engage, empower, and educate are key to bringing the entire community together to successfully deal with some of the complex issues that Cambridge is facing. Under the current proposed terms of reference, we have serious concerns that the entire community is not being included. Under the current terms, voting membership will aim to have a cross-representation of people who were impacted by the priority issue of poverty, homelessness, mental health, addiction, and public safety, as well as diversity of where in Cambridge people live. We feel that community groups such as ours is not being included. Business groups are not being included. Landlord groups who directly deal with these issues are not being included. And the vast number of regular citizens, homeowners, appear not to be included. And the list goes on. The structuring is unfair and undemocratic. The structuring further shows citizens that the City of Cambridge is not willing to work together and ensure that all residents of Cambridge have their voice heard and that we are all part of the solution. We also have serious concerns that it is only the striking committee who will be selecting membership for the CWAC. If it is truly the desire of the city to include a diversity of where people live in Cambridge, then all city councillors from each ward should have a vote in the selection process to ensure that their ward is being fairly represented. This crisis is not affecting one part of Cambridge, but all of Cambridge. This crisis has not just impacted a select group of people, but Cambridge as a whole. In conclusion, Cambridge Safe and Strong does not support the current terms of reference for the new CWAC and does not support membership votes being limited to the striking committee. We are asking Council to vote on a new terms of reference, which includes a more equitable and inclusive representation of Cambridge. We are also asking that voting for committee members include all councillors representing all areas of Cambridge. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I'm going to have the clerk talk yet again about the process by the striking committee and the fact that all of council has to rectify that decision.
So through you, Madam Chair, once again, the striking committee is made up of 7 council members. These members come forward, they take and review the applications that are done online, and then they appoint those citizens. Just to make it clear, all those appointees do come to council for ratification, so it is a council decision at that point.
Thank you. Question and comment from members of council to the delegate. Councillor Liggett.
Actually, to staff, I want some clarification here. That would be with the procedural bylaw, which we have not passed yet. So we are still operating under the old procedural bylaw, which still has just the mayor, chair of general committee, chair of planning development, and one rotating council. So ratification is way later in the game. So for us at this point to go backtracking on the striking committee.
So I think or through you, Madam Chair, I think we're dealing with 2 bylaws. We have a procedural bylaw and we have an advisory committee bylaw. At this point in time, we are dealing with the advisory committee bylaw, and it would come, the committee appointments would come to council for ratification. So in this point in time, we will try and get a striking committee meeting between July 15th and 19th, because the closing date is July 11th for these applications, at which point in time it would be ratified probably on the July 23rd council meeting.
Okay, so just for my education as well as some of the other surprise looks around the table, when did this advisory committee, like the one you're talking about with all those councillors on it, when did that come into being? Because I don't remember us
Through you, Madam Chair, that was at the end of 2018. That advisory committee bylaw was passed. Does anybody remember that? Okay. September 18th to be exact. Through you, Madam Chair.
September 2018?
September 18th, 2018.
So then all of the members that were appointed to committees since then were supposed to have gone through that process?
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, and they have.
Yes? Oh my God, where was I through this time? Okay.
Well, I wasn't here. All right, any further questions of the delegate? Seeing none, thank you very much for your presentation.
I have a question for the clerk, if I may.
We will address it afterwards. You've done the presentation, we've completed questions. Thank you. The members of council will print the bylaw as it is written right now, so you have a written copy in front of you. Right. Councillor Reid, you have the motion.
Yes, I do. Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Montero, the Community Wellbeing Advisory Committee, that report 19-196, Community Wellbeing Advisory Committee be received for information, and that Council approves the Community Wellbeing Advisory Committee terms of reference as appended to report 19-096. And I'd like to speak to it, if I may. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was really pleased when we came up with this, because in my head I was thinking back to the days when I was first on council and we had the Human Resources Advisory Committee that I sat on. And in that committee we had a number of people who were from community groups within our community that dealt with some of the issues that we're looking at today. And we tried to have some impact. And we had some difficulty because of the fact that sometimes issues came up too quickly for the advisory committee to deal with in a timely manner. And we decided that perhaps there was a better way of dealing with it than through that kind of advisory committee. But since that time, and I've been talking to a number of people within the community, people have said to me, you know what? That having a Human Resources Advisory Committee, maybe we should resurrect something. Well, this is very much like that, and this is what we have come to today, is to look at some way in which we as council can have some impact on what's happening within our community, that we can take some actions that will help everyone in our community. And that means we help landlords, we help businesses, we help homeowners, we help people who are addicted, we help drug users, we help everybody. That's what this committee is for, is to look at everything. We know that we have an addiction problem, but we also know we have homelessness, and we have poverty, and we have mental health issues, and we have worries about safety. And we also have passed recently that we want to be an inclusive community. And if we are to be an inclusive community, then we need to take some actions to make sure that everyone who lives in this community and who resides here has an opportunity to have their voice heard and has an opportunity to be a part of the community in ways that they can be. This committee is not to exclude, it is to include. And I'm very pleased to be moving this particular motion because I think it's a really important motion for us and for our community. And I just want to assure everybody who is here tonight and everybody who may be listening out in the further community, we value inclusiveness. We value it very highly. We want to include everybody. We want to include Cambridge Safe and Strong. We want to include a Clean Cambridge. Everyone needs to be included. And that's what inclusiveness means. It's not to exclude, it's not to divide, it's not to say that one person is better than another person, or we should have this one and not that one. What it means is that we want to have the strongest committee possible that can help us as a council take actions that are going to be good for our community, and it's going to be good for our residents, all of our residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Devine.
Yes, through the chair. Councillor Reid spoke quite well. I agree with what she said. Now, I'm going to ask the chair how to handle this. Mayor McGarry, on the appointment, which is under the terms of reference, which we'll be passing as well with this motion, on the terms of reference, I'm either going to ask for a friendly amendment to have the entire council review these applications. And I understand the process. Everybody in council understands the process here. That normally items, are we listening? Normally items of this go through the striking committee. This is a very, very serious committee that we're asking the residents of this community to deal with. And it's going to be a very tough job. It's not fair to council to have a council meeting with 10, 20, 30, 40 items on the agenda, and the 41st is to look at the people that the striking committee have appointed. That's not fair to council, it's not fair to the residents, to this committee. So I'm asking that either a friendly amendment, we accept a friendly amendment on that?
No.
Councillor Reid? You won't? Okay. So we won't do that. Okay, so I'm asking.
I will ask for quiet in the gallery. Thank you.
What I'm asking here is to make an amendment to this. I would need a seconder, of course. That council, in its entirety, appoint the people on this committee. You have a seconder? Can we discuss the amendment?
Speaking to the amendment, Councillor Adshade, you were next. Did you want to speak to the amendment? Okay, then I'll bypass you. Councillor Montero, you were next. Okay, Councillor Montero.
Thank you. Your Worship, here we are already putting in question this advisory committee that's not even been formed yet, and putting into question our striking committee. The striking committee has been working ever since I've been here, 9 years. And at the end of the day, after the striking committee does their choosing, we have the option, we as a whole council have the option of looking at it and question some of the results or the people that they chose. Sometimes we reverse that. The only thing I'm afraid of, sometimes that gets released to the people that have been chosen before council approved, or they somehow find out about it, and that's not right neither. The thing is, that's not put in question. I don't think anybody in that striking committee has any. We want to be inclusive of every area. We want to do what's the best for our community. So they pick the people, whoever applies, And I also want to thank the people that applies, because there's people out there, right there on our audience right now, that donate their time, that give their time, they get involved with the city. So I give them kudos to apply for it. And the thing is, the striking committee is not going to pick an advisory board that's too lopsided. It has to be chosen the way you choose a jury. Somebody that's independent, that has no malice behind why is that person in the advisory committee. So let's not put in question what we've been doing, which works well now, to change the rule that all of us, there's 7, we're 9, there's 7 in the striking committee. And then the 2 left over get to have a look at why they chose that way. So, and I can only remember, I think was twice, but that a certain person was chosen that was questionable as to why. So, I'm sorry, but we can't just change the rules. We're trying to do the right thing that's why we're here. That's why we got a full house for our community. So let's not put in question the striking committee choosing the advisory committee.
Thank you. Councillor Liggett to the amendment?
Yes, thank you. I don't feel that the amendment questions the striking committee by saying we're just going to add 2 more people. And I also don't think it's not being done before. We change policy on a regular basis. We change the rules on a regular basis when we see a need for doing that. And I think that the amendment just is doing something similar before the policy or the rule comes into place. The amendment will set the rule. So it's not an after the fact thing. It's a present one. And I also think that the amendment is more inclusive. So if the point of this committee is to be inclusive of everybody, I see the way it's set up now, it's going to exclude 2 of us 9. That's not inclusive. So here we are debating something, a committee that's supposed to be all about inclusivity, but yet we're not being inclusive of full council at the request of some council members. And I don't understand why there would even be a problem of making a difference here.
Thank you. And I will point out that the striking committee recommendations comes to full council, who can weigh in at that time. Councillor Reid speaking to the amendment.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. What I see happening here is a matter of trust. And I'm thinking that we need to trust each other. We need to trust in the processes that we have put in place. We have a striking committee, and we've all agreed that this is what the striking committee should be. And then we want to be inclusive, so the striking committee brings it to the council where everybody has an opportunity to weigh in. And if they don't agree with the position of the striking committee, then they can put forth an amendment and change it. Everybody gets an opportunity this way. What I'm feeling right now is that there isn't trust, that we're going to do it right, that we're going to include everybody. And I don't like that feeling. I don't like it at all. And I think we need to stop and consider what we're doing and where we're going. What this this whole committee, the advisory committee, is set up to do is to help us. It's there to help all of us try and find the best way through some very serious problems that exist in our community. And here we are bickering over whether or not we're going to actually live by the rules that we already have in place. And to me, I don't think we should be changing the striking committee. We had that. We agreed. We all agreed that that was the way to go when we want to have an advisory committee. So I'm going to stay committed to that, and I'm going to put my trust in all of my colleagues here around this table that will do the right thing.
Thank you, and I will ask again for quiet in the gallery. Thank you. Councillor Ermetta.
Well, thank you, Your Worship. As a member of the striking committee, and while I do agree that it does come to council for a discussion, I don't have a problem if council's involved from the get-go on it. So I don't have a problem with the amendment. I don't think we need to make it into like a big thing either way. So I'm comfortable with the amendment, and I'll be supporting it.
Thank you. I'm going to ask Councillor Adshay next because you haven't spoken to this yet.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I've been thinking about this too, and I too don't have a problem with the amendment. It's only adding 2 more councillors. I think it'd be easier, and this is a special circumstance. I think there's no reason why we can't all sit together. It's not a matter of trust. I think we should all be included, and I don't have an issue with us all getting together. It's only adding 2 more councillors. And I think in a lot of ways it's maybe better that way, because it's kind of hard after the fact if you're sitting there, if you disagree with some appointment, I think it's kind of hard to, at that time, to say I don't agree with that appointment, then you're going against the advisory committee. So I don't have a problem with adding 2 more councillors to this advisory committee.
Thank you. Councillor Devine, this will be the last time you speak to this motion.
Thank you. I see this as common sense. It's not an issue of trust at all. I don't see it as an issue of trust. It's about, in Councillor Reid's words, about an inclusive community, about voices being heard, to find the best way. But this is only for the terms of reference of this committee. Just this committee. Not every other committee. Terms of reference for this committee. That's all it is. We have a crisis in this city. There's a crisis Canada-wide. There's a crisis in Ontario, a crisis in Southern Ontario. There's a crisis in our community. This is what we have to deal with. We're going to be asking these people to do a tough job. A very tough, difficult job. We need to have the full council select these people. It's no different than when we did the multiplex selection process. It didn't go through the striking committee. It went through council. It went through council. Donna, will you stop talking to me here, please? Okay, it went through council. Now this is an important committee. This is a very important committee. Now, by virtue of the striking committee, we're using 7 councillors anyway. Might use the whole council. Because you know what? It's going to be very embarrassing for those councillors if it goes through the striking committee and it comes back to this horseshoe, and one of those 2 councillors has to turn around and say, why is that person on there and not that person? These are televised meetings. Don't you think that's going to be embarrassing for the people of the community? Come on. Let's get real here.
Thank you, Councillor Devine, and I will remind Council yet again, we can still deal with the motion, that any decisions made by the striking committee has always come back to Council fully. Councillor Liggett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I thank you for that, but we all do know that. The problem here is the striking committee meets in closed session. It comes forward into open session with the names. Then we will have to debate out in open session using names of people, and it will be public like it always is. And exactly, an embarrassment for the people who we may not want on the committee. When I think of the problems that can happen with some of these committees, and this goes a little bit offside, but I'm going to say it anyway. We had a committee not that long ago that had to do with finances. One of the people chosen for that was a fraud artist, a con artist, convicted.
Councillor Liggett, I think we'll stick to the issue at hand here, and I'm going to ask the clerk to talk to, quiet in the gallery, please, or I will clear it. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I am speaking to the issue. I'm talking about committees that are set by council.
Thank you, and I'll have the clerk answer you afterwards, but continue. Thank you.
My point is the importance of these committees to the community as a whole. And I think it is important that we operate everything above board. All of council is in agreement with this particular committee. This topic, all of these topics, have been devastating to this community, no matter what side you are on. And I think it's extremely important that 100% of this council decides who goes on to that committee before any decisions are made in the final vote and ratification. It's too important, it's too polarizing. And to say that it's a lack of trust, I don't understand that one. I think that's just pulled out of the air.
Thank you. Lydia?
Through you, Your Worship. When it comes down to when we're speaking about an identifiable individual, if we were to get to that point, we would definitely go into close. We would not be identifying such items in open as stipulated within the Municipal Act.
Thank you. And that's the chair's privilege if we need to discuss names to go into closed. Councillor Mann.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you, I know that this is near and dear to everyone's heart, and I think the representation that we have from the community tonight tells us that they would like to see as much representation as possible on the striking committee. So I wonder if we could have the striking committee as structured, plus a maximum of all council. So in some way you word it to a maximum of 9 members on the striking committee. So you have your striking committee, and if all of council is available, then they can sit on it as well. But it may be very difficult to get all of council together to make this decision. And so if you leave it open-ended so that you can have the striking committee plus the other 2 members of council, then you leave it so that the striking committee is there and the other members of council could be involved as well. That would be my humble submission.
Thank you. I'm going to ask the clerk to make a comment here. Thank you.
So through you, Your Worship, just to clarify, you're indicating that you would like our striking committee terms of reference to be changed. Is that correct?
Just for this committee. So what we're saying is that it would be the regular composition of the striking committee would be 7, but in this case we would include it to 9. We would make it full council if available.
We can, through you, Madam Chair, we can indicate that all of council will consider the advisory committee applications for this committee. I would like to mention that during the striking committee meetings, all of council are able to go and attend. Only the 7 have voting rights, but you are able to go and attend and speak as you wish.
Thanks.
Councillor Wolf.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'm disappointed that the creation of this committee is creating so much controversy. I was hoping that this committee would help council with decisions, and since its inception, we've just heard arguing back and forth. So I'm not sure how effective it's going to be. Saying that, all of our committees are important. This one isn't special. Every one of our committees is important, and the advice they give to council is, is important. We have, for the 13 years that I've been on council, we've had a striking committee that has chosen the members of our advisory committees. That has worked in the past, and as the clerk has pointed out, if other members of council have had anything they'd want the striking committee to know, they've attended those meetings and shared their experience or their opinions. I think that I don't think we need an amendment to change our process just for this committee. So I'll be voting against the amendment.
Thank you. Members of council, I'd like to move forward with a vote, but I've got two more speakers, Councillors Montero and Ermetta. Do you want to continue to speak? Councillor Montero.
Thank you. This question of trust came up around the horseshoe. And that's exactly, this committee is not even formed yet. We're already questioning, well at work. That's trust. There's no trust, even amongst ourselves, by what I'm hearing. No. If you're going to change a striking committee to 9 members for this particular advisory board, then change the rules. It'll be all the 9 of us for every decision that every striking committee from now on, if you're going to do that. Because this way, making exceptions for this one because it's a hot potato, come on, it's trust, and I'm against the motion because I smell it. It's a question of trust. But I'll go one step further, and I'll say it again. If you're going to change the rules for this advisory board, going from 7 to 9, then you change it from now on until the end of this term that a striking committee is 9 people.
Thank you. Councillor Ermetta, and
Well,
that'll be it.
Well, thank you, Your Worship. Where I'm coming from on this is, while I do agree that all of the committees are important, this is a very big issue. I don't want to downplay the other issues in the community, but we all heard this at the door, right? And I mean, it was a big issue too in my area, which is primarily a suburban neighborhood. So, I don't have a problem with having all of council make a decision about who goes on that committee because I think it's a huge issue. It's one of the biggest issues around, and I think more people in the community would feel comfortable about that. And I don't want to blow the issue out of proportion one way or the other, but I don't have a problem with supporting the amendment. And I can only speak for myself. I'm not going to try to guess what other people around the table are thinking or anybody's motives. I'm just going by what I'm saying, what I'm thinking, and I'm comfortable, like my conscience says, I have no issue with going in that direction. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'm just going to wrap up comments with the chair's privilege here. The previous committee that this wellness, the Community Wellness Advisory Committee came out of, I was a member of that. I recall those meetings with up to 80 people, and it was unruly. Even though it had several subcommittees, it didn't have terms of reference to start out with, and I think everyone could agree that we weren't able to accomplish what we needed. So I want to commend staff to stick with this, to put a terms of reference forward so that we can have a new committee to advise council on important issues. To me, this committee is as important as every other one it is. I also understand that there's been a procedural bylaw in place, and as I've said several times already, I do believe that council does have ability to weigh in at any time. So in saying that, I want to thank again those committee members that want to step forward to the committee. That doesn't exclude it. If you want to apply and you're part of a broader committee, then apply. If you're a business representing them, if you feel that this is a committee you would like to sit on, go ahead and apply, and that's what inclusivity is. And with that, I'm going to call the vote now, along with the amendment, and record it. Go ahead. Sorry, on the amendment.
And that motion is lost, 5-4.
And with the loss of that amendment, we'll move forward to the main motion. So if members are, I did have one suggestion in the main motion, just when it says receive services in Cambridge, would members of council accept something like receive social services in Cambridge? And that would clearly identify that those that come for a haircut, I think Councillor Devine said, would be not included. Councillor Liggett?
I'm questioning the whole receive services because I don't understand. You know, even if somebody doesn't have a residential address, they're still going to live somewhere in the community, maybe without an address. So that's still residing, living in the community. I think what Councillor Devine might want to speak to this, but what I don't think any of us really want to see, maybe I'm wrong, but anybody who does not live, because living doesn't mean that you have to have a street number or whatever. You could be living at the bridges. You could be living with some family member that you're not paying rent to, right? That still would be somebody who lives or works in Cambridge. But to receive services, I don't think that should be somebody that's advising us on these issues. I think there are other people in this community who could be bringing that same knowledge to the table and have a real vested interest in this community versus somebody who doesn't. There's going to be applications from many, many people, and so I would rather have somebody who, whether they live at the bridges or temporarily in a hotel or couch surfing with a relative, I'd rather see them on the committee than somebody who does that somewhere else outside of the perimeters of this community.
I take your point. I was just suggesting that the wording says instead of receive services in Cambridge, receive social services. Again, I remind members of council that it is up to the striking committee to weigh in on all those applicants, and we do give preference to those that are residing in Cambridge. Thank you. Councillor Devine.
I think we just made a decision, so we need to let the striking committee deal with it.
And with that, I'm going to call the vote.
Poll vote, please.
Poll vote. All those in favor?
And that recommendation is carried 8-1.
Thank you. Now we'll move forward with item 2. I'm sorry. We are going to just have a 5-minute recess as requested. 1-minute warning. Okay, we're reconvening. Thank you, everyone. And we will move forward now with item number 2, and we'll have a presentation first from our interim city manager, Jeff Wilmer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will keep my remarks brief. So the second report is regarding a process to identify a consumption and treatment services site for Cambridge. CTS is identified as a need through the Waterloo Region Integrated Drug Strategy as one way, and only one way of many, of helping address the current opioid issues. The previous process that was undergone in Kitchener and Cambridge for the Cambridge component did consider 150 Main Street, and that was not selected as a CTS site. And flowing from a regional council resolution of April of this year, the resolution was that the region would work to identify a possible alternative site in Cambridge and work together with Cambridge that meets provincial and federal program criteria. So certainly this is not a new issue in the city. It's been debated here at Cambridge. It's been debated at the region. And so we're certainly aware that there are various perspectives in the community, and people have strong feelings on different sides of the issue. We want to hear from all of you on that tonight. And there's no denying, really, that the opioid crisis is real in our community as it is real in communities across this country. So we respect that people have varying perspectives on how to address issues around opioid addiction. And consumption and treatment services is one aspect of that. I want to emphasize, and I think this is something people generally are aware of, that a CTS site is not simply safe consumption. It is safe consumption, but in addition to that, and the real emphasis of it, is the access to treatment services, the wraparound services. They are available at the site, and that includes multiple services, typically including addiction counseling, mental health support, rapid access addiction clinics, the things that can help people, when they're ready, start to address and overcome their addiction and the battle that they're having. So I think that's a key aspect of the province's current approach and the approach that the region that the region is taking and that staff are recommending here as a CTS site. It's the big emphasis is on the and treatment services in addition to the safe consumption. There's a CTS site that has been operating in Guelph for about a year, and a number of our councillors and a number of staff and other community partners did visit that site recently. It was a very instructive visit for those of us who went, and I know a number of councillors who were unable to go that day had been on their own at other times. For me, something that really resonated, in addition to the comments from people who work at the clinic, but I wasn't expecting to hear what I heard from other people whose experience was peripheral to the clinic. And there were three of them. There were a local business, a local councillor, and a police officer. The local business person's comment was that before that clinic was up and running, every day when they arrived for work, they had to go around the periphery of their store and clean up the needles before the customers would arrive. Since the CTS site was up and running, they look and they don't see any needles. That was interesting, and I wasn't expecting to hear that. The local councillor said that the clinic, the CTS site had been up and running for roughly a year, and he had only 2 complaints about it. That too was surprising and unexpected from my perspective. And then the third one was the police officer who talked about his experience before and after. In the before, whenever there was a drug overdose in the community, police would be called in, quite often administer naloxone, try to revive a person, take them to emergency at the hospital, stay with them until they were able to be admitted, taking several hours of the police officer's time that day. But that since the CTS site was up and running, they do not get those calls. So it's a better use of police resources from the police officers' respect in terms of the other demands on their time. So there was a lot to be learned from the Guelph experience, but I think those, for me, were quite instructive because they came from people who weren't directly connected with the clinic, but whose experiences before and after, I think, reinforced why Guelph is often cited as a success story when it comes to CTS clinics. So, Madam Chair, the recommendations of the staff report are before you. I'm happy to answer questions, or you may wish to hear from delegations first.
Thank you. I will offer any questions or comments from council members first. And seeing none, we will move forward with delegations. And I will remind you again that you'll have 5 minutes to speak, and for all delegates coming forward, please ensure your comments are respectful and directed to the topic issue listed on the agenda. And I will also be continuing to request that the code of conduct is followed in the gallery and that we won't be hearing applause so that we can respect everybody's opinion coming forward. And with that being said, our first delegate is Connie Cody. Welcome, Connie.
And the public. I'm Connie Cody, a resident of Cambridge. Tonight, I am standing in front of our City Council to once again request a multifaceted and alternative solution for this national crisis. The province recently announced the merger of public health. How does this have an effect on the planning, the monitoring, the mandate, and the process? If there's a new model on a collaborative approach outside that of the provincial scope and funding, why have discussions not been brought forward so that the public might be more engaged before it is at its end of planning stages? At the first public consultation session, it was Waterloo that was seen to have the largest hot zone, and yet at the next session, it was gone. As Cambridge's hot zone seemed to expand, we should take a look at how Waterloo resolved the problem without a consumption site or a shelter, as it seemed to have worked. We keep hearing that consumption treatment sites save lives. The reality is that these sites are being proposed because people are not ready to stop using harmful and illegal drugs. This truth would not meet the requirements for harm reduction, and so doesn't get mentioned. Trying to camouflage these sites under the disguise of a medical facility gives a false message to our youth and to our community. These sites work on the premise that persons with addictions from as young as 10 years of age need to locate and purchase illegal drugs to then bring to the site to consume. There is nothing safe about a person wheeling and dealing in the drug and sex trade at any age. To think that this is the model that was brought forward by health and social agencies who have a vested interest in their continuance is appalling. Replication of organizations like Sanguine that are built on this social crisis is nothing more than growth of a social franchise, and that signifies failure. The purpose of the four-pillar strategy that includes harm reduction, prevention, treatment, and enforcement is severely lacking in equality when the focus is 85% towards so-called harm reduction and 5% on each of education, rehabilitation, and law enforcement, minimizing public safety and prevention to the lowest of priorities. Education is focused on how to safely consume, nothing on prevention or negative effects of drug use. These consumption supervision sites fail to meet the requirements of the four pillars and have no valid exit strategy. What our children see in our community heavily influences their behaviors. Consumption sites are temptations, seducing users to engage in a dangerous downward spiral, making each day harder for recovery. Community toxicity will escalate. We will lose bystander apathy. Residents will continue to live in fear, and costs will be unsustainable to maintain. Saving lives should be more than just saving people from an overdose. Why no concern on toxic brain injury, the most significant risk of an overdose? These evidence-based studies prove that prolonged substance misuse and non-fatal overdoses cause serious complications. It only takes a few minutes, sometimes only seconds, to cause a permanent brain injury. For the 40 sites across the country that have reversed over 3,500 overdoses, that was 3,500 instances of permanent brain injuries. Brain injury due to substance abuse is significantly increasing, and yet little attention is focused on this harm that has long-lasting implications for sustainable recovery. The longer a person consumes, the greater the negative impact on that cognitive function of the brain, increasing drug-seeking and risk-taking behaviors, which blocks a person to seek treatment. A person could recover from an overdose, but each time a harmful drug is consumed and after each overdose, the brain continues to slowly die. Consumption sites are harm promoters, and funding should be towards on-demand treatments that include drug courts, rehabilitation, prevention, treatment, housing, detox, and mental health clinics. That is why we are advocating for alternatives to be considered that offers hope, offers change, and gives back a person's life. I request that Council not support the advisory committee model, but that just passed, as it does not represent a true reflection of the Cambridge community, and to also request for a motion to look at alternative solutions and to defer tonight's approvals on site selection.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from members of council? Seeing none, thank you very much. The next delegation is Carol Thorman. Carol? There you are. Welcome, Carol.
Before I start, I think I'd like to ask for the same clock and 5 minutes that we had for our break.
I don't know if you remember, there's a lineup for the loo, so I thought I better just think the bio break's longer. But go ahead, Carol. We fixed the clock, by the way.
Mayor McGarry, council, and residents. I'm Carol Thorman, and most of you know that I have had a deep involvement in the opioid crisis long before my sister Helen was brutally murdered in broad daylight in her backyard. Her murder is an ongoing investigation, so I can't share everything that I know, but I can tell you that based on the information our family already has, my children fear for my safety every time I speak publicly. That same fear was evident when I talked to members of the public about showing up at this meeting tonight. Although they agree with the stance that we have taken, they're afraid to come forward publicly and say so. I and a lot of others have done reams of research. There are a lot of buzzwords that are available in all that research. One of them is the fact that this is a polarizing issue. Well, I beg to differ. I believe that the majority of us do not disagree that we are not doing enough for our marginalized people. Where we disagree on is the solution. Some of us want long-term sustainable solutions, not helping them from one fix to the next. It's not the lack of consumption sites that are causing people to die. It's the fact that they're misusing drugs. Until or unless we get a handle on that, we're throwing more good money after bad. We don't want less for them, we want more. And as long as we're spending our money on Band-Aid solutions, there won't be help available that they desperately need. We keep hearing about evidence-based studies. I can tell you that BC was the first site that opened almost 15 years ago, but they still lead the country in opioid deaths. Instead of fixing the problem, they've franchised opening more sites. Repeating that model here is going to have the same outcome. People will still be dying. Public safety is also an issue. Our own chief of police on at least 2 recent occasions has publicly admitted that we as citizens should be afraid. We are, and that should not be happening. We keep hearing that we have to do something. Our choices are have a consumption site or do nothing. Well, that's not true. Waterloo Regional Police or Public Health reports over 19,000 client interactions just through their needle and syringe program. 84% of those were repeat customers. In addition to that, 12,000 naloxone kits were distributed just in Waterloo Region. These interactions multiply if you include the various other regional departments that have access to these people on a regular basis. There's ample opportunity to interact with and direct clients to rehab services, except there are long waiting lists for those services. Most of you were on council when they did the Rapid Access Clinic report on a previous council. You pointedly asked, how long would it take if somebody came to you tonight and said, I want treatment? The time finally given was at that point 6 to 8 weeks. It's significantly longer now. I know you've all been to the Guelph Clinic, or most of you have been. It's a lovely place. It's clean, it's pleasant, they're welcoming, but is it effective? Ask the pregnant women who also use that same building who can't use the public washrooms because they're locked because it's still being used as a shooting gallery. Ask the families who can't picnic in the parks because they couldn't find a safe place to put their picnic blanket down because of the needles littering the ground. Ask the parents of the 18-year-old boy who was found dead yesterday of an overdose. Ask the now traumatized school-aged children who found him. They have a site. People are still dying. The medical community has a mantra: treat, street, and repeat. And that basically sums up what you're suggesting we continue to do. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over again and expecting a different outcome. The Waterloo Region Substance Use Study identified issues related to crystal meth leading to significant health outcomes for individuals, families, and communities. Crystal meth is addictive, destructive, but not an opioid. So anything like naloxone will not work to reverse that overdose. How's your plan going to work for those people? Crystal meth is the leading drug in this community. How are you going to help them or the community if this is your plan? Waterloo Region has already approved one safe consumption site, which is as yet unfunded by the province. There's no guarantee we will get that funding, and our region, as bad as it is, doesn't even come near the top of the list province-wide in terms of danger levels. So the chances of having 2 such sites are increasingly slim. We're wasting both precious time and resources while people are dying. There are examples of more effective methods out there. The Portuguese community should be very proud of what they've done in their country. Rhode Island has a very successful track record that they've instituted. Huntington, West Virginia is another site. I can provide you with all the data should you care to ask.
And
this community...
Carol, I just might say, if you could wrap up,
I'm wrapping up.
I've given you that extra time. Thank you.
This community is not satisfied that this is the best we can offer. We will be behind you to fight for it if you join with other communities who have had the courage to turn down these sites and demand better for their communities. At the end of the day, we can go through this process, waste another year, $30,000 to come to the same conclusion. This community does not support what you're suggesting. In the words of one counselor, a former police officer, if it's predictable, it's preventable. This is on you. Any questions?
Thank you. Any questions or comments from members of council? Seeing none, thank you. The next delegation is Sandy Faulkner. Sandy, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor McGarry and council members. My name is Sandy Faulkner. I'll keep it short. I'm a Cambridge lifer. My children live and work here. I expect my grandchildren will be raised here. Yes. For over 25 years, my family has also provided care for children and youth in this community that are in need of protection. Last year, the Ontario government moved to increase the age of protection to include all children under the age of 18, and I applaud that move. This now aligns with the UN's Convention of the Rights of the Child, and I am proud to live in a city that adopted the Children's Charter of Rights. Cambridge recognizes the right of the children to have safe places to play, healthy environments, protection from neglect, abuse, and exposure to violence, both in and out of the home. Article 33 of the Convention also identifies and recognizes the very clear right for children to be protected from harmful drug and the drug trade. So, imagine my surprise when I stumbled across this Made in Waterloo Region visioning model that suggested not only a CTS site for adults, but also a separate CTS site for youth. This is alarming. This is not protecting children. And while I recognize that this is just a vision currently, and that you might not even have heard about this yet, myself and others will be paying close attention to ensure that this vision does not become reality. I know how Plant the Seed works, and I am very concerned about the idea of a youth CTS even being entertained. I attended 2 of the CTS community consultations regarding 150 Main, safety for the children walking to school, fear for the demise of our downtown Galt core, and the belief and understanding that a violent drug culture would increase crime in the area were the top 3 concerns from these consultations. The meetings were well attended by our community. Some of those who disagreed with us suggested we were spreading fear, that we suffered from NIMBYism, that we were without compassion or care for our marginalized citizens, and that we should believe in evidence-based data. So, some recent evidence-based data. In January of this year, Calgary reported a 276% increase in drug-related calls, a 40% increase in violence, and a 45% increase in break-and-enters in their 250-meter buffer zone around their CTS. I truly hope that the City of Cambridge and those representing and protecting our children understand that those stats actually represent victims, more victims. They're not just numbers, they are more victims. We cannot lean on the phrase of unintended consequences when we see and hear those numbers. My adult foster daughter says this about a CTS. If I get through this without crying, we're all good. Growing up as a child of parents that were addicted to drugs was one of the hardest things I've had to go through. Do I think putting in safety injection sites is a good thing? No, I don't. You are telling an addict that it is okay to do drugs, and you give them the place and products they need to do them. There were days where I would tell my foster parents that I just want my mom to die so I don't have to worry and stress about her anymore. And then she asked the question of all of you, what child should ever have to feel that way? Indeed, what child should ever have to feel that way? Her suggestion would be to give persons with addictions a place that they can get clean and better and be there for their children and family that love and care for them. She wants you to know that 14 years later, her parents are still addicted, and she is still waiting for that call to say that one or both of her parents are dead. I would say she has lots of lived experience and living experience, and yet she disagrees with the concept of the CTS. Where is the consideration for her voice? And for her voice as an adult and as a child with lived and living experience? She's still waiting. More and more we hear of children being poked by needles. 3 little sisters in the UK who made the mistake of riding a bus in their community. A little girl in Indiana who had the audacity to wash her hands in a park washroom. Or our own Cambridge little 2-year-old Marcus who only wanted to go fishing with his dad. All exposed, all subjected to painful treatment for weeks, and all living for months with uncertain futures. Unintentional consequences? Not in my opinion. We've known about the increase in needle litter for years, and we just keep handing them out. I want you to reach out to council members in Oshawa who recently voted down a CTS for their city of almost 400,000. And I want you to ask them why. If you won't listen to us, maybe you will listen to people in the same position as you are. A 270% increase in drug-related crime around a CTS does not demonstrate the idea of safety to me. I want you to honor your pledge to protect our children. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. Any questions or comments from members of council? Seeing none, thank you. Next delegation is Keith Rivers. Welcome, Keith.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, members of council. Better? Madam Mayor, members of council, city officials, and guests. My name is Keith Rivers. I am a 60-year resident of Cambridge, where I've lived and raised my family and worked at Babcock and Wilcox. I'm a director of Citizens for Cambridge and a chair of the Addiction Treatment and Mental Health Committee. I'm here to speak in favor of the consumption and treatment services site selection process, and I hope to demonstrate the importance of proceeding quickly on this matter. The opioid crisis affects everyone. The problem is overdose and deaths caused by contaminated drugs. No CTS is doing nothing. The goal is to keep people alive so that they can engage in treatment. We all know there's a crisis, and I won't go into the statistics. They're well known. However, all citizens in this town are bearing the trauma, not just those who are deceased or their families, but others who serve them and know them, and those who survive with the consequences of an overdose, physical trauma, brain and organ damage. There are a number of users in Cambridge. The estimate from the region is about 1,000 if you ratio it by population, and many are functioning citizens. 150 or less really fit the usual addict, homeless, down and out type cast, and Bridges only has 78 residents and not all are users. So we know that many of these are normal citizens in our community. The CTS is a remedy proposed by public health and sanctioned by federal and provincial government, and programs are based on decades of experience and mountains of research, and I would refer to the Canadian Nurses Association discussion document, 85 pages long, 20 pages of very well-respected research in the reference manual. The CTS is an important component of the continuum of care that connects this estranged population to health care and to treatment. This avoids the onset and progression of many diseases, reduces immense health care and service costs, emergencies, etc., reduces needle litter, provides a space for people to be when they're high and still under supervision, avoids contaminated drugs, provides an environment where medical support can be delivered. There are many treatment agencies and services that exist now, and CTS provides a critical link. Attached to the back of your handout is a program that shows the continuum of care for the City of Cambridge, and you'll see there that there are 14 agencies that deliver 32 programs through 22 connection points. So we do have services that are available. Yes, we can do more, but certainly in terms of treatment and services available, there is sufficient there to help our people that are addicted. The opposite of addiction is not sobriety, it is human connection, and the CTS will treat users with compassion and hope. So what happens if we do nothing? No one wants the current core issues to get worse. The irony is that without CTS to remove some of this from the public, the situation will continue to deteriorate and make matters worse. Injection in public is happening all over our community. Social agencies and their staff are now becoming unsafe injection sites as users migrate to their doorsteps and washrooms seeking ad hoc rescue from overdose. Our social workers and others are ill-equipped but forced to respond to emergency as people they know succumb in their presence. PTSD, leaves of absence among EMS, fire department, police, social agencies are increasingly dramatically as caring people burn out. So help is at hand. We know about the well-run OPS and CTS in Guelph. I visited it myself and was really amazed with what went on there. So what does the future hold? There's an emergency response that is not perfect at this point in terms of the CTS. However, health care techniques are continuously improving and rapidly changing. We've got a strong drug strategy and many tools to deal with this. In summary, we've got a serious community problem. We need strong, quick, and concerted action, and public education is key, and I urge councillors to endorse this process and meet the community needs. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. I don't see any questions or comments from council members. Thank you. Adam Cooper is our next delegate. Welcome, Adam.
Good evening, Council, Mayor McGarry. Thanks for listening to me. My name is Adam Cooper. I run an IT business in Cambridge. I'm part of the voice of Cambridge Kitchener Waterloo. But I'm mainly here basically as a resident to try and represent the residents, businesses, and people that are also getting kind of forgotten in this. Before I go on with what I was actually originally going to say, at the beginning of this, we were presented with a flurry of kind of rosy ideas of what it's like to live around an example of a site in Guelph. I happen to have a list of other quotes from people that live around the site in Guelph. I'm just going to say them. Quote 1, I would say the one here is not effective considering the amount of needles still being left around. Quote 2, I refuse to go downtown unless it's for a doctor appointment. It's disgusting and frightening. Quote 3, it angers me to no end that they continue to lie about the effects on their community to push their agenda. Next quote, they will do whatever to justify this site. From what I've seen, very few addicts use the site to shoot up. The majority of them just stop by to pick up the freebies, needles and paraphernalia found lying around the city. Final quote, I will not even go downtown because having this site has ruined this beautiful city's downtown area. It's a shit show, and an expensive one at that, but not expensive for the users. I feel like we've been here before. We had consultations over the winter where it was an overwhelming It was overwhelmingly objected to by the citizens. It was just against it. Overwhelming. You guys know that. Okay? You seem to have taken that as meaning that overwhelming objection to this was to 150 Main. I can tell you it's not. It's about these sites in general anywhere. They should not be anywhere. There is one injection site constant, and that is the utter misery that the local residents and businesses are put through. And I've experienced this. The sites exist at the expense of public safety. It's a fact. These sites attract addicts, they attract dealers, and combined, they attract crime. If anyone wants to debate that with me, welcome to at any time. I've yet to have anyone take me up on it. This environment of crime and fear, it's there. The crime and misery experienced by the surrounding residents and businesses of every injection site that has ever been opened prove it to be fact. And I'm not stating this from studies. Any one of us on either side of this argument can find studies that'll bolster your opinions. It's easy. Okay, there's plenty of them out there from Sanguine, other places have biased interest. I don't listen to studies. This comes from fact, from living with it, from being assaulted, being robbed, from talking to people that have had the same thing happen, from our groups talking to people that are in these areas. Just talk to them. Listen to them. Not at times when these people have been set up by the people that are operating this, just at any time. If you go and talk to the people that live around there, the facts of what it's like, it's indisputable. So I ask, why is it okay to sacrifice the safety of these residents and their families who have done nothing to deserve this? And why, after so much time personally dealing with this issue, have I still not heard not just a rational answer, but any answer at all from KW Region or from this council as to why the surrounding residents and businesses and schools are being offered up as innocent sacrificial lambs to this completely illogical plan? Addicts are dying, yes, which is why we need to reject this dead-in-the-water model and put our efforts into one that does not continue the poisoning of these people and implement a model that focuses on treatment and ensuring addicts are no longer engaged in activities that are harmful to themselves and the community. We need a plan that works for everybody. Without the community support, you're going to get fought. You're going to get fought by us. It's going to be continuous, and we're going to keep going in circles like this. We need a plan that works for everybody. I believe that any efforts to reduce the overdose deaths should strongly consider public safety. No plan should ever include concentrating addicts into one spot, enabling them to get high only to release them to the local streets where there will be a clear and present danger to themselves, the community, as they proceed to commit the crimes that we are all aware of. We've all been dealing with it in Cambridge. It's why a lot of us are here. And they will just be released to go and fund their next fix, which means they're committing the crimes that I and many others have been a victim of. And when they do get the money, they'll be flocking to the sites where the dealers are to get those fixes, because it's simple supply and demand. They will be there. I'll only be about 15 seconds. If they even worked, it is completely illogical, irresponsible, and downright criminal, as far as I'm concerned, to try to help one small element of the community by implementing an experimental plan that severely endangers the rest of the community. A community that is innocent in the matter has done nothing to deserve this. We need something that works for everybody, where you don't just look around and pretend that the damage is not going to happen. It does. It happens at every single site that has been set up, and it will continue, and it will not end, because these sites have no end game. They're not sustainable, and people will suffer, and we are suffering. Why do you think there's so many people here? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I see no question or comments from council. And I would just let those that are presenting know, I think I forgot to say it earlier, when you hear the second bell, we've got about 10, 15 seconds left, and we're being a bit generous, okay?
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Council.
The next delegation we have is Bill Kirby. Welcome, Bill.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Council, members of the public. I've heard a lot of things tonight already. Some of them we've heard before. Some of them touch us deeply, and nobody is unaffected. There were many things that I wanted to say tonight, but I think that I'm going to change that. I'm going to encourage you to vote in favor of the process that you have in front of you tonight, and that may sound strange to some people and encouraging to others. But in fact, what it means to me is that we have certain tools in our toolbox, and this is one that we're being afforded. It mitigates the harm to people who are suffering. It does not solve the problem. It's a tool. It provides a channel for those people who are suffering to the other services that they need to get better. And you can't force someone to get better. They have to want to do it. Some people will die. In fact, one thing I can guarantee tonight, everybody in this room at some point in the future will die. Myself included. Hopefully not here tonight or anywhere nearby. However, I'm encouraged by the fact, having been personally acquainted with every single one of you, I know that you have within you the courage to be true leaders in this community. And that means, to me, don't sit on your hands and use this as the only thing we've got. You all have great brains in your heads. Use them to find new, inventive, creative solutions so as the people who have spoken before me tonight don't have to come back here and say, oh my God, why is this problem getting worse? Why does this problem still exist? Be the leaders you're elected to be. And I don't say that to be critical of you. I say that because I'm putting my faith in you. I'm trusting you, because that word was floated tonight. I'm trusting you to be more than what's going on here right now. I'm trusting you for the people who are not in this room, who don't even know this conversation is happening, but who need you. So be more than this CTS. Find better ways. Help solve the societal problem that exists in Cambridge and every other city on this planet. Why do we do the things that we do? Because we're afraid to live. Have the courage to be more than what's happening tonight. In terms of the urgency of this matter, because it says in the report that we have a short time to react to this, and that CWAC is going to be part of the engagement process. I wonder how that will happen, because if the first planned meeting for that committee is September, how short is the timeline that you have to face with respect to getting the approvals that you need for a CTS? I'm going to leave it at that, although I could speak for far more than the 5 minutes you've allocated me, and I've only spent 3.5 right now. I really, really implore you to do more than what's happening tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from members of council? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Our next delegation is Jeffrey Shaver. I think I saw him come in. Welcome, Jeffrey.
Good evening, Council and Cambridge and residents. What I'd like to speak to is about support for safe injection site be located in Cambridge. Now, we currently have some restrictions in our bylaw that Cambridge has put together, and those restrictions are directing the location to be outside of an area where it can help the most. The Region of Waterloo, through Public Health, has identified that the main area, the red area that's identified, is the Galt Core, extending up to the Highway 8, the Delta. And that is the extension of the major portion of the current issue. And I think we need to, with the current issues with having 2 kilometers outside of having the issue outside of the cores, it's not really supporting being accessible to people if we do go to issue one of these sites. Now, there's a lot of contention about where a site could potentially go, and I would like to suggest that perhaps a shipping container-based unit can be perhaps used that could be then perhaps approved for a site for a 6-month process, and then it could perhaps be updated and moved if we find that to be necessary, as opposed to with a brick and mortar site, which would be harder to do. I'd also like to speak towards some recommendations from Dr. Nykamp, who is the coordinator for the region, and he had suggested that we provide these drugs to people at the safe injection sites for use at the sites, because that would also cut into our theft issues. Because if people weren't breaking into people's backyards and stealing bicycles and stealing these items to sell in order to buy drugs, if they had access to them a few times a day at these sites, you're going to cut that. You're going to cut that market where people are stealing for drugs, and you're also going to cut the profit that the dealers are making selling drugs. That's going to have an impact on crime, and it's going to cut the money out of it, which is going to be less opportunity for new people to come along. Because you arrest one, and another person sees the opportunity, and they come along and take it. But if you cut out the profit from that ability, you can get around that. And I think that that there is some comparison to look at, because there's even a few churches that had some mixed support that they might even perhaps be supporting of a site, but they're both these churches, one in Preston, one in downtown Galt, are both located within that core, which would prevent them from being within that boundary. So I think we really need to look at how restrictive that has been to this process, and that the fact that that we can't really make a proper you can't get a selection that's going to qualify for any of those supposed provincial fundings that might help pay for this, because they also require you make a business case that would show that it's in the core area where these problems are happening. So if we're going after still building a site outside of this core area, how are we going to make a business plan to the province for having any funding, or are we just going to pay for it all of ourselves? An increase on the citizen tax load on the residences, as opposed to the tax system from the province of income, and the issues that can cause. That some councils have even looked at, like other substitution. In Vancouver, as actually even a council member has suggested looking at cannabis substitution models that are giving people alternatives to these drugs to try to get them off. Now, hydrocodone treatment has also been authorized, and as I say, that goes back to the safe supply argument that these sites can be authorized, and if we actually pay to have them supply the drugs, could, I think, have a major impact on the crime rate, could actually cut the issues with people stealing things just to sell them to get drug money, essentially. So I think that can have a major impact on our break and enter issues. We also have the Galt camera system, which I haven't really been hearing much about. My understanding is it's a city-controlled system here, and we should perhaps be using the system if we have to add some more cameras to go after the people that are actually committing these crimes, as opposed to the whole community in general. Going after the people that are actually causing the issues. And I think that is something that needs to be looked at. So I think the location, especially if we look at like a shipping container unit that could be moved around relatively easy by a rigging crew, a new site could be selected if that needs to be, because I think that offers us a lot of opportunity not to be fixed to a specific site if that does become contentious, to leave it there at a certain area. But I think that these safe consumption sites are definitely something that's needed in our community. And I think it can make an impact on directing people to go to that site, to keep them from using Soper Park and areas downtown to currently inject. It seems like every washroom, it seems to be an issue. And if we actually have a spot we can direct people to go to, I think that can be something that will have a net positive for our community, and particularly if we actually take the next step, which was suggested by Dr. Nykamp in the Waterloo Regional Chronicle. I believe that was a 2017 December article, that support for supplying them with the substances ourselves, and that gets rid of a lot of the overdose issues as well with it too. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any question or comments from members of council? Seeing none, thank you. The next delegate is Ryan Wooten. Did I say that right? Is it Wooten or Wooten? Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. My name is Ryan Wooten. I am in the 10th grade at Paraneta Gallinate in Cambridge. For my English assignment, I was asked to draft a persuasive letter to a person of influence on the topic needing attention in our communities. I chose the debate over drug injection sites. Here's my final assignment for your consideration. Dear Mayor McGarry and all ward council members, In the city of Cambridge, Ontario, specifically near Galt, plans for an SIS or safe injection site are in the works. The safe injection site may seem beneficial to the surrounding communities, but there are many reasons why they are not. A safe injection site is a place where some drug users go to use their illegal drugs under the supervision of a medical personnel who would reverse an overdose if it were to occur. Although it is reported that a safe injection site reduces crime, needle litter, and decreases overdoses, recent articles from the cities in which a safe injection site has been implemented, they have reported the opposite. Drug injection sites are also providing referrals to clients, yet treatment services are not readily available. Firstly, the safe injection sites are not able to connect drug users with on-demand treatments, as well as wait lists can be months to a year long. In a report from CBC News, it is reported that, quote-unquote, patients' access to psychiatric and psychological services, pain clinics, outpatient addiction services, or treatment beds can be months of waiting. In the case of the pain management clinic at Ottawa Hospital, the wait is from 6 months to a year. 6 months to a year wait time, that means that the drug users have a longer wait time to seek help with their addiction and can fall back into the world of drugs. In addition, in the above statement by Ujin Walla, Connex Ontario, the leading provincial website for addiction and mental health treatment services, provided statistical data upon request that shows months-long wait list for rehabilitation beds across Ontario funded by OHIP. Secondly, in the cities where SAS have been established, a honeypot effect has increased crime rates, needle litter, drug trade, human trafficking, and public nuisance calls. A Calgary News article stated that a report from police showing the crime in the Beltline has skyrocketed near SafeWorks harm reduction program located inside the Sheldon M. Chermere Health Center. The province had to commit $200,000 to task a team in Calgary to combat the crime increase in the 250-meter buffer zone around the injection site. Another article stated that residents told stories about finding overdose victims in the street, aggressive encounters outside their homes, and repeated thefts from vehicles and storage sheds. Several neighbors said their messages and phone calls to AHS have gone unanswered. Thirdly, the safe injection sites do not prevent overdoses, but serve to enable the continued drug use, causing drug-related brain injuries and damage to other organs in the body. In the article, it is stated that drugs and alcohol have a number of effects on the brain, including disruption of nutrients needed by the brain tissue, direct damage, injury and death of brain cells, including neurotransmitter receptors, alterations to the brain and chemical concentrations, including neurotransmitters and hormones, and deprivation of oxygen to the brain tissue. Furthermore, from the Brain Injury Association of America, it states, the opioid epidemic has led to the creation of a new term, toxic brain injury. This occurs from the prolonged substance misuse and non-fatal overdose. This puts every single drug user at risk for hypoxic or anoxic brain injury caused by the insufficient lack of oxygen. Insight, the first injection site piloted 15 years ago in Vancouver, BC, cites that it saves lives by offering harm reduction by way of reversing overdoses, providing clean needles and drug paraphernalia supplies, and providing referrals to community services. No one will die of an overdose this day. No one has ever died of an overdose since this opened in 2003, writes Kevin McQueen in his 2015 article, McLean's. Yet the same article states that in 2008, then federal health minister Tony Clement called Insight a failure to public policy, indeed of ethical judgment, since the succession of ministers, including current health minister Rona Ambos, have been consistent in their opposition, saying it diverts finances from treatment, legitimizes illegal drug use, encourages others to inject drugs, is a magnet for crime, and threatens neighborhoods. Injection sites make claim to reduce the number of overdoses, yet the number has not gone down. In an article from CBC News, it cites, the BC Coroner Service says more than 1,400 people died from an illicit drug overdose in the province in 2017, making it the most tragic year ever, according to the chief coroner. an increase of 43% from 2016, but that figure will grow as the test results continue to come in. In conclusion, the safe injection sites should not be implemented into Cambridge because they do not connect the drug user with the necessary treatment to get off the drugs. The SIS creates a honeypot effect around the building and affects surrounding communities. And finally, even if the safe injection sites prevent deaths from overdoses, overdoses are directly linked to toxic brain injury. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Ryan. Will you stay at the podium? I have a question or comment from Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to the delegation. I just wanted to say I'm so pleased to see you here tonight. We rode up in the elevator together, and I thought, I wonder if he'll stay through all of this and give his talk. I imagine your parents are very proud of you, and your teacher is very proud of you. As a former teacher, I'm very proud of you. Thank you for coming tonight and telling us your thoughts.
Thank you.
Councillor Reid, are you going to mark this gentleman's presentation? Hang on, Ryan, back to the podium. Thank you. I think we're going to have to give him perfect. Councillor Devine.
Thanks. Thank you, Chair. I'm going to keep it short and sweet. Great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mehta.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to echo the comments made. I'm very proud of you as well. I'm also on the Youth Advisory Committee, and if you're interested in joining any of our committees at the city, we're always looking for new members, so if you have the time, so thank you.
Never miss an opportunity. Thank you very much, and you'll be able to see the presentation too, so that your teacher can too. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move forward now to the next delegation. Angela Campbell. Angela? Oh, there you are. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Council and my fellow citizens. My name is Angie Campbell, and I've lived in Cambridge all my life. In fact, my birth certificate says I was born in Galt. I grew up hanging out in the local pool halls, Chaz, Lansdowne, Riverside, and yes, I did do drugs at that time. I hung out with the dealers and the people who didn't do things on the right side of the law. I did drugs for the first time when I was 13 years old in the bleachers at the Fall Fair. I was not what most would consider an addict, but I did it maybe 5 out of 7 days a week back then. Even though it's been 20 years since those days, I still remember them and the people that I knew at that time. I have family members and I have friends who have died from overdoses, but the ones I remember the most are the ones who didn't die from an overdose, but they chose to kill themselves because they had no hope of ever getting off of those drugs. We need to give these people hope. They need hope. They need something better than what we're offering them. I keep hearing the phrase, people are dying, and that's correct, people are dying, but they will continue to die even with a CTS site. No Canadian city that has a CTS site has seen a decrease in fatal overdoses. It just keeps increasing. If there is one that I'm missing, please let me know, because I may have missed one. In 2003, Vancouver opened its first of many drug consumption sites. In 2002, Portugal, which was then called the heroin capital of Europe, decided to decriminalize drugs, but only if you have less than 10 days of use in your possession. They put their focus on treatment and helping people to get their lives back. In 2017, Vancouver, with a population of 2.4 million, had 376 fatal overdoses. Portugal, with a population of 10 million, had 29 fatal overdoses. I've been to Portugal. My husband was born in Portugal, and it's a beautiful country, and you see nothing like we see here. To me, which one of these plans is working? The figures are just showing it. Am I saying that we need to decriminalize drugs as Portugal did? No, that's a debate for another day. But when a person in Portugal is found in their possession, they are brought before a commission. That commission determines if that person is an addict, or if they're just a recreational user. Anyone found to have an addiction is offered on-demand treatment right then and there with no waiting. Why are we not looking into something similar to this? If a person is caught in possession of drugs that are deemed for personal use, instead of arresting them, offer to take them to treatment right now. But we can't. We can't because we don't have on-demand services available in Waterloo Region. Rehabilitation programs that are paid for by our health system have a minimum of 30-day wait, and some are extensively longer. Our rehabilitation programs are also not long enough. I have been told there are 3 weeks to 30-day programs. That's not long enough for anybody. They need more time. For some of the rehabilitation programs, you have to be drug-free for so many number of days, but detox itself has its own wait list. So again, you have to wait. So you finally get into detox, but when you're released from detox, you are then put on a wait list for rehabilitation. So you're on your own until a bed opens up. And that could be anywhere from 30 days to a year. To get into a counselor for mental health, the wait list is close to a year. How can any of these be considered good wraparound services for a CTS site? We need to be real about this. The province is not going to fund 2 sites in this region. As somebody else pointed out, there is other communities that have it worse off than we do. And we've already applied for one. So if we have to spend money on a CTS site, why do we have to spend our money on a CTS site? Why shouldn't we be putting it into something that is going to help everybody? Get to the root of the problem, like mental health services, better rehabilitation, better detox, because I don't think we're going to get the provincial funding. If a CTS truly worked, then why are the overdeaths still on the rise? Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I don't see any requests for comments or questions from council members. Thank you. The next delegation is Angela Raposa. Angela, welcome. And if somebody's coming to the podium, could you please introduce yourself? Thank you. Right in the microphone.
I'm
Great.
Rick Hilborn from Hilborn Pottery. I'm also a member of CSS. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chair, councillors, staff, and members of the public again. Thank you. My name is Angela Raposo, representing Cambridge Safe and Strong in regards to the consumption and treatment services site selection. I'll try to keep this short, as I'm sure many of our bums are getting sore. On March 26th, Cambridge Safe and Strong presented you with a petition that had 376 signatures opposing the placement of a CTS in or near downtown Galt. We went to 90 businesses and garnered 198 signatures from business owners, employees, and customers. 178 residents from the surrounding Galt area also signed the petition. On March 26th, Council voted to extend the interim control bylaw 5518 in the 500-meter buffer. Council further approved a resolution to restart the Cambridge planning study, which included comprehensive zoning bylaws. Through this work schedule, preliminary recommendations about location criteria were not to be included until September of 2019. Only location criteria, not site selection. Today, June 19th, the city has canceled and completely abandoned the March 26th comprehensive zoning plan. Today, a full year ahead of what was planned on March 26th, the city is already choosing sites this week and next week with no comprehensive zoning bylaws. The new plan states that a CTS is to be located in reasonable proximity to the area of need, which is the Galt core. This flies in the face of 90 businesses and over 300 signatures stating that they don't want a CTS anywhere near the core. This position is based on a number of serious concerns about locating a CTS in our fragile core, and this will not change. A new Community Wellbeing Advisory Committee will be comprised of individuals with issues of poverty, homelessness, mental health, addiction, and public safety. Structuring a committee in this way will not change the fact that the majority of the community does not want a CTS near the Galt core or, in fact, anywhere in Cambridge. Potentially excluding business owners, community groups, and homeowners shows citizens that the city is not willing to work together and ensure that all citizens and residents of Cambridge have their voice heard and that we are all part of the solution. In addition, fast-tracking a CTS in Cambridge, having a possible biased committee to study the issue, will only enrage the community further, not engage them. This new plan undermines public confidence in the open and transparent council that was promised. As such, Cambridge Safe and Strong requests that council reject this new fast-track CTS plan. We request that Council reestablish and uphold the original planning study from March 26th before any CTS sites are selected for Cambridge. We further request that Council make it clear that Bylaw 5518 and the 500-meter buffer not only be upheld, but be made permanent. In conclusion, on March 26th, Cambridge residents felt that their voices were being heard. They were confident in the direction that the city was taking in regards to a CTS. Today, the city has taken 10 steps back, and your community confidence in the decisions being made. Restore our confidence and uphold the original plan put forth on March 26th. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for members of council? Seeing none, thank you. The next delegation is Randy Sod. Randy, welcome.
Madam Mayor, councilors, city staff, fellow citizens, my name is Randy Sod, and I am the president of Citizens for Cambridge. CFC is a group of citizens who care deeply about our community and are motivated to help solve problems rather than just sharing opinions or making demands. Having cooperated with dozens of Waterloo Region organizations to develop better solutions, on behalf of Citizens for Cambridge, I'd like to address the CTS topic and how we can all contribute to a better solution for Cambridge. Sadly, there's no silver bullet solution that's going to solve our problem, but in general, the best solutions typically consider the interests of all of the stakeholder groups that are usually uniquely designed for Cambridge and smartly balance many competing interests. For this to be possible, we believe that the engagement process needs to be improved and that we as citizens must be willing to collaborate, especially with those who have differing views. While I can personally attest to the immense commitment and effort the city and the region put into engaging the public, I'd like to highlight a few opportunities for enhancing the engagement process. Firstly, around knowledge sharing. We appreciate the deep knowledge and expertise that public health and others involved have amassed that has contributed to their recommendations. Our experience is that the depth of this body of knowledge is typically not well demonstrated, nor is it shared with the public in an accessible and digestible way. This has led to citizens seeking their own expertise and in many cases focusing on evidence that validates their perspective, regardless of how applicable it may be locally. Secondly, I want to talk about transparency. There's little focus placed on helping people understand the way such planning processes actually work, whether it's clarifying the unique jurisdiction of the city, region, and province, relevant legal obligations, or aspects of the process or solution that citizens can actually influence and not. The realities are not made clear. Citizens often misunderstand what's happening, and ultimately trust between the city, region, and community is eroded. The third issue is around a lack of citizen orientation. And I know this doesn't concern this council specifically, but it applies through other experiences perhaps. The region has public health leading public engagement. The scope of what public health is responsible for and able to effectively address or respond to doesn't include many of the issues that citizens are most concerned with. As such, the info citizens want has been missing from conversations and engagement. Major citizen concerns are poorly addressed, and many walk away from engagement opportunities feeling like their opinions don't really matter. Fourth is responsiveness to loud voices. Whether council or city administration, it seems the loudest and most persistent voices in our community continue to have the greatest influence on decision making. While we applaud being responsive to feedback, disproportionately responding to the most outspoken citizens is a dangerous act for a host of reasons. It's critical that we engage more citizens and amass a more fully representative understanding of what all residents think. Now, while it's great to see many passionately contributing to the future of our city, we'd like to talk a little bit about how we also believe citizens can more effectively engage in developing better solutions. Firstly, extreme perspectives present a risk at both ends of the political spectrum. At one extreme, we found those who want the opioid crisis to be exclusively addressed as a moral ethical issue. While we must save lives, our elected officials and administrators have accountabilities and many things to balance, as well as hard limits to what can and can't be done that have to be appreciated. On the other end, we see those who are anti-CTS, not only simply downtown, but anywhere in Cambridge in any form at all. While concerns that contribute to this position are totally valid from our perspective, some groups have resorted to fear-mongering and spreading misinformation, especially over social media. We believe most citizens are caring, compassionate human beings who want the best for our community. And while it may seem reasonable to join or support a group that aligns to our own position on CTS, we must avoid lending our voices to groups that are acting in ways that divide people, promote misinformation, and are adversarial to our counterparts of the city and region. To have influence and ensure concerns are smartly addressed, it's critical we understand the others who we need to appease as part of building a solution for all. With respect, compassion, compromise, we're capable of developing ways of balancing priorities and mitigating risks, rather than addressing one group's needs at the expense of another's. On behalf of Citizens for Cambridge, I want to lend our strong support for a CTS that is developed with an innovative design, a strong governance model, as well as the checks and balances that will ensure we do not further compromise our community by attempting to address this critical and growing need. I encourage our fellow citizens to consider that it is possible to develop a solution that will not further harm our community, and to join us in collaboratively working with the powers that be to create the better solution that will serve us all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I do have one comment, if you don't mind just staying there, Randy, from Councillor Liggett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Randy, your words seem to be well chosen, but I'm going to ask you to clarify something. You said that the voices that are listened to most are the loud voices, the most outspoken, but your group that you're representing has been one of the loudest voices and one of the most outspoken. So do you want to tell me what makes your group any different than any other group in the city that is representing a different point of view? Now, remembering that a Facebook group is not a group as an organized group. Just because they have a Facebook page doesn't make them an organized group. But I want to know what makes you different.
Yeah, it's a great question, and thank you for asking it. So one of the purposes of our group is that we are not concerned with an issue or set of issues. We're concerned with the nature of the discourse and engagement that our community participates in. So our goal is actually to create voice for everyone in our community, and to see that solutions are developed in a way that considers the interests of many in a thoughtful and logical and rational way. So while our group has a loud voice, it represents the interest of the others and not what we think as an individual group. We set our own personal interests aside to the degree that we possibly can or attempt to, because I recognize that no matter how clear we are about our biases, we can't remove them entirely. And our interest is really to come up with the best solutions for Cambridge. And part of that includes increasing participation amongst the citizens whose voices aren't represented or who don't feel engaged or compelled to lend their voice to the discussions that happen. And ultimately, better civic engagement will lead to a better community for us all. And we don't stand here for ourselves and the 100 people or the 300 people that follow us. We stand here for our entire community.
Okay, just a follow-up to that, please, Madam Chair.
Okay.
Would you agree, though, that aside from the groups that you're talking, the Facebook pages versus groups, would you not agree, though, there's another group in this room who also has a voice, who also is outspoken, but takes a completely different viewpoint from your group?
So there are several groups in this room that are represented, and
No,
I
I'm
know
talking about an
several of them.
organized group, not a Facebook page group.
Okay. Sure, so like the one that spoke earlier? Are you speaking about Cambridge Safe and Strong? Is that your question?
Yes.
If you want to be explicit,
I might just ask that we stick to the subject matter. Thank you.
Sure.
So would you not agree that they also have a voice and a request of council, and that they have equal opportunity?
100%.
Okay.
Yes,
I
absolutely.
just want to clarify,
Yes,
you to
it's-
clarify what you were saying earlier. Okay. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
Thank you. And I've got Councillor Adshade
Thank
with
you.
a question or comment. Stay right there. Thank you.
Thanks, Your Worship. And Randy, I just wanted to commend you. I think you did a really good job trying to be balanced and fair. And I think what you hit the nail on the head is we need citizens' engagement. This is not an easy topic. We all knew the solution. We all had the idea this wouldn't be such a debate, such a difficult topic. So I really applaud you for trying to get the citizens different diverse views and try to collaborate together so hopefully with the Citizens Committee, we can come up with a really good, the best possible solution that we can. So thank you. That's all I wanted to say.
And thank you for that. It's an honor for us to serve our community just as it is for all of you.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Okay.
Thank you. No further questions. Council members, I have some correspondence. It's in your package this evening. It was requested that I read it out loud, so I'm going to do that. Okay. Dear Honourable Mayor Catherine McGarry and Cambridge councillors, we are a long-time Cambridge family. I am Carla Johnson, my partner is Steve Ruda, and my daughter is Darren Ruda. Stephen and I have lived in Cambridge since 1990, and Darren was born and raised here in our wonderful city. As long-time Cambridge residents, we've been increasingly concerned with the lack of response to the opioid crisis in our city. We have read the research and spoken with frontline workers. We've been hoping our councillors would make decisions based on the lessons learned in other cities and in conjunction with surrounding communities. In the fall of 2018, I ran for City Councillor in Ward 8, hoping to be a strong voice for our community. This opioid crisis is closer to my family than most know. A person dear to our hearts was addicted to opioids and lost to us for many years. We lived in fear of the phone call telling us that they had passed. Fortunately, we are one of the lucky ones. Our loved one has found our way back to us and back to their family and is back to being a wonderful parent to hold their child. They lived on the streets in Waterloo, Kitchener, Cambridge, Welland, and Niagara, and shared that the worst city to live on the streets is Cambridge. We are growing concerned that this issue will follow the footsteps of other issues our city has faced, such as the multiplex. Despite the multiplex being an extremely beneficial thing for this community, a beacon for many, many good things for our city, it was yelled out of existence and is a long way from being resolved. Well, that was updated last evening, I might add. We do not have the luxury of time, though, with this present addiction and homelessness crisis. If we do not make an immediate effort to mediate this issue, people will continue to die. Right now, our city is considering a site for potential consumption treatment services. This initiative is long overdue. The present conditions cannot continue. The present conditions are not acceptable, and those opposed to these interventions have not offered any better options. A site of this nature is necessary and imperative for several well-documented and researched reasons. And I'll just read the first sentence of the following 10 points. They are associated with a link to other materials. This crisis isn't just affecting people with addictions, it's affecting their family, friends, and neighbors. We're all victims of this crisis. That was number one. Number two, Joy Sampler Fishman, the wife of the inventor of naloxone, lost her son to an overdose. She's a strong advocate for safe places that monitor people who are using drugs. She believes there is a really good chance her son would be alive and functioning today if he'd been supervised, cared for, and offered support. Number three, this crisis is multifaceted and going to get dramatically worse on its own. 4, stigma follows people who are addicted to opioids, and that stigma is often a driving force behind the voices opposing support services. 5, this crisis is a perfect storm of opioids and fentanyl, two powerful drugs that have changed street drugs and the impact of street drugs dramatically. 6, according to OMARS, Waterloo Region will lose over 800 residents to drug overdoses this year, 2019, compared to 2015 when we lost approximately 200 people. The numbers are gut-wrenching and only getting worse. Number 7, first-hand accounts from my sister, a nurse in Toronto, show that the fentanyl amounts in some drugs are so high, medical staff are needing up to 18 times the usual doses of naloxone to revive some people. Number 8, the type of people being pulled into addictions today are a broader spectrum of people than we've seen caught up in addictions ever before. Fully functioning people with jobs, homes, and families have been trapped in this horrible mess. Teens full of hope and doing well in life have died from a single drug laced with fentanyl taken at a party. Any one of us here tonight could have been caught up with it or may yet be caught up in it. Number 9, the WINS, Working to Improve Neighborhood Safety Initiative in 2018 to get peer volunteers reaching out to people in the streets and to help clean up drug litter, was a success beyond expectations. 10, people are people. It is simply so. Whether they're addicted to drugs or alcohol or homeless, people are people. We as a community are not the same without them. They are mothers, fathers, sisters, and brothers. Each of them are full of possibility, creativity, and brilliance. Parents need their children back home. Children need their mums and dads back. Our communities need them fully functioning and contributing to all our lives. A, first we need to keep them alive. B, we need to keep them in contact with them and provide care. And thirdly, we need them to help themselves get help. The voices of opposition are disturbing to us. We've heard heartless, thoughtless comments such as, they're the ones putting the needle in their arm. They chose this lifestyle. I was able to avoid it, so can they. Cold-hearted thoughts like this have led too many to try and stop any kind of intervention. These voices seem more interested in disrupting the process rather than finding solutions to save lives. These voices don't offer a better solution. They just seem to want to disrupt our ability to move forward, to disrupt our ability to reach out, to care, to provide help, to disrupt our ability to treat people as all people should be treated, with kindness, love, and care. And in conclusion, we need our city councillors to step up together to make decisions to save lives and start immediately. We need our city councillors to choose life for every resident, especially the ones whose voices have been drowned out by addictions or homelessness. We need our city councillors to be strong and stand up for our entire community so we can move forward to create a better city with hope for every person in every sphere of life. We're not just asking, we're fully expecting each councillor here today to listen to the voices of evidence, reasons, and research. The evidence shows that supervised consumption sites work, they are safe, and they prevent people from dying on our very own streets. People with addiction and who are homeless are still full human beings. They require love and care, and any decision we make should be driven by kindness and hope. Thank you for your kind attention to this vital issue. Carla, Johnson, Stephen, and Darren Rudra. Thank you. Now we will move forward with the motion, and Councillor Montero has that motion, and then we'll put it on the floor.
I do, Your Worship, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Adshade. I better read it, all of it, because some of the comments we heard so far tonight, I think they should be addressed, what we're voting for here. Cambridge Consumption and Treatment Service Site Selection Process. That the Report 19-184, Cambridge Consumption and Treatment Services Site Selection Process be received for information. And that Council proceed with identifying a candidate sites and one preferred site for a consumption treatment service with wraparound services in Cambridge. Outside the core areas, in any area of need as per requirements of the Provincial Consumption Treatment Services Program. And that the proposed Community Wellbeing Advisory Committee be consulted to develop the community consultation approach to be used for the site or sites identified for a potential consumption treatment services. And that Council approve an upset limited of $35,000 plus HST from the operating budget for the retention of a professional facilitator to assist with designing and implementing the community consultation for the site, identified as a potential consumption and treatment services site. And that the final work plan and proposed timelines for applications to the federal and provincial governments for a consumption and treatment services site in Cambridge be brought back to council after consultation with the Community Wellbeing Advisory Committee. And further, that a copy of the resolution and report 19-84 in support of consumption and treatment services site in Cambridge be forwarded to the Minister of Health, area MPPs, and the region of Waterloo.
Thank you. Did you want to speak to the motion, Councillor?
Yes, please.
Okay, go ahead.
We sat here today, we got a full house, we listened to everyone. And of the 11 delegations that we had, 6 were no, 5 were yes. Mail, as you just read, from 3 people, all yeses. This is a crisis that we've been experiencing for quite some time, at least in the last 10 years, and been progressively getting worse. But the thing is, I just came back from holidays, and Portugal was brought up a couple of times. In the small little islands in the middle of the Atlantic, this exists. And the population of those islands, some of the islands, only have 5,000 people, and they have a problem. Others, a little bigger, one with the biggest island, probably similar population is the city of Cambridge, 135,000, and they have issues. If you go to the small little towns with 2,000 and 3,000 people, they have issues. This is all over Europe. This is all over North America. We're not alone, and I don't like to say this word, we're not alone. Yeah, but we're not. We think the sky is falling because of what we're experiencing here in the downtown cores. This is going to get better, but it's not going to be fixed overnight. Look what Vancouver has been dealing with for the last 15, 20 years, and they still don't have a solution. Myself and Councillor Mann went on a couple of road trips last year to see other cities, what they were doing. They are in the same situation as we are. Some have a safe consumption site. I don't agree with just a safe consumption site. I agree with the wraparound services. Yes, it's been brought up by some of you. It takes forever to get somebody into a rehab. It takes a month, 2 months, sometimes more. You can get help faster if you pay for it. But this is beyond our scope as a city. How are we going to manage this? How are we going to pay for this to get a rehab, to send somebody right away, because that window is small. But at the same time, we have to see is there are people dying. Somebody's daughter, somebody's son, and their uncle. We all know, I bet you, every one of you in the audience and us around this horseshoe know somebody that has experienced this. If we sit back and do nothing, it's not going to help the situation. And that's what we're doing. We got an interim bylaw that and I agree with the interim bylaw because it's affecting people, innocent people, business people, mom and pop shops that They rely on people to come in, and some of the people are afraid to frequent their whatever business they own in our downtown core. So we tried to do the interim bylaw, and it still stands, and the motion I just read is still does not apply for the cores. But we have to do something, because I know people very close to me that they're afraid of that phone ring. And if they haven't heard from that person for 3 or 4 days, they're in a panic. They don't know what happened to that person. That's not a way to live. It's affecting their life too. No fault of their own. So the thing is, we as a council, we are responsible if we can save some lives. And I'm not saying to just provide them a place for them to do their drugs, to look after their addiction. This, even if we could get out of 15 or 20, 2 or 3 that would take the opportunity to get the help, that would already be working. So we cannot sit back and wait and do nothing, hoping this is going to go away. It's not. It's not going to go away. I've been known to say, get used to this, because this is the new norm. It is the new norm, and it will be for a while until we come up with a solution. But we cannot sit back and wait. And we're not shopping for a place for these people to look after addiction, just in case we are told from up above, provincial government, you have to have one. At least we're prepared. At least we have a place in mind, not just anywhere where they want to put it. That's the reason for this motion. It's just in case. Will it happen? The way things look now, I don't think we're ever going to get one, because the region already has one in Kitchener. So we were not on that list. I don't think we're going to make that list. And the list was 29, 30 places that they're going to put one of these in. I don't think we qualify. But we have to be prepared. And helping these people, they need our help. Just look inside yourselves, and because it could affect you. It could be a member of your family or somebody that you know really close. I'm supporting the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Mann.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be brief. We've heard a lot of very passionate individuals speak tonight. We've been challenged to do more. Others have described areas of our city that are in a deplorable condition, and people who are scared and frightened to walk in our community. Of the 1,000 in Cambridge, we have 850 victims who, through other circumstances, are addicted to these opioids. Everyone tonight has spoken passionately about this issue. Most spoke of doing something to give people hope. We heard about a place to get clean. We heard about a place to get better, a place where we could give people hope. And so I would like to propose a friendly amendment to our motion tonight, because I struggle with a consumption site, because I think if we're going to deal with the problem or deal with the situation, let's deal with the problem, and the problem is taking drugs, doing illegal drugs. And I think if we have a consumption site, then we're only dealing with a symptom. I would like to take the word consumption out of those 4 paragraphs and talk about and emphasize a wraparound treatment service, because that's what I've heard tonight. People want treatment, they want wraparound services, they want to be able to give people hope and something that will make them better. And I think if we say a wraparound treatment service, I think that provides us with the emphasis where we have wanted it. And Mr. Wilmer spoke about that this morning, or this evening before we got started, that the emphasis should be on a wraparound treatment service. So I would like to make that friendly amendment to the motion.
Councillor Montero, are you thinking that's a friendly amendment for you?
I don't agree with that friendly amendment. The reason being is, in order to get these people to a place to get help, they have to go there. We have to bring them in somehow. And if we take that away, just waiting, you will have no customers. So I'm against the friendly amendment.
Councillor Mann, what did you want to do? And if you want to make that amendment, you will need a seconder. Can you turn this mic on?
I'm not hearing any supporters for a friendly amendment to the motion, so I'll just leave it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Mehta.
Well, thank you, Your Worship. This is obviously a very difficult issue. A lot of work has gone into it from staff, so I do want to acknowledge that. I do also appreciate the feedback from the public on all sides of the issue. And I'm glad that we were able to hear all points tonight and that everyone was respectful, so I commend everyone for that. And I know sometimes when you get very passionate, it can be hard, so I'm glad that we were able to have a good discussion. So as far as where I'm coming from, it's probably no surprise. I continue to remain opposed. I do want to mention that the people of my ward are strongly opposed to a site. I did knock on every door. I continue to have town hall meetings and hear what people have to say. And I mean, there are supporters of my ward. I'm not saying there's not, but I'm still hearing a clear mandate in my ward not to proceed with such a site. But people do want better treatment. They do want to have services in place to help the victims. So, you know, I believe in this council taking a strong approach to lobby the provincial, federal, regional government to all work together towards better treatment and to raise awareness and to try to get people to choose to go that route. Although, you know, it's got to be, I guess, a choice when they're ready, but I do believe that we need to take a proactive approach in that regard. So I'm in favor of the treatment aspect of it all, but I'm not in support of the site, so I will be opposing the motion based on that. And I think too, like, if I had a friend who was an alcoholic, I would not take them to a bar. I would say to them, you need to get help. And I would do it in a loving way, and it's a decision they would have to make when they're ready to do that. So I would want to, you know, be respectful and not heavy-handed, right? But I don't agree with the overall approach. I've been hearing that a lot in my ward, as I had mentioned, and I have talked to undercover officers who do have a lot of concerns about this. And they've told me that they don't think it's a good idea, and I'm going to leave it at that. And I have knocked on a few doors in Guelph. I haven't done the whole city, and obviously I'm too busy for that. But what I have heard in the areas that I have gone to is that there is a bit of unease with the downtown recently. And there are some people are concerned about even going to the mall. And I'm being very careful, or at least I'm trying to in terms of how I'm wording it. But what I have heard of people who are concerned. And I would not be ready to go in this direction. And I'm just going to leave it at that and saying that I'm not in support of it. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Devine.
Yes, thank you to the chair. Sometimes you have to make unpopular decisions. We have issues in our community, and we're here to represent the community, but we're also here to represent everyone in the community. everyone, okay? We have people that are addicted, we have people that are dying. I can agree with the process, what we're doing right now, I can agree with that process. But as we go through the process, I will also reserve my right, if I think it's going sour, I will vote against it. We had some very good speakers here tonight. Excellent speakers. Both sides. Adam Cooper did a great job. And he brought up some very valid points. As did Connie Cody. Carol Thorman. But Mr. Cooper, there's one thing I'd give Mr. Cooper credit for. It's something I didn't do. And God bless him for doing it and bringing it up. I was at the safe injection site in Guelph. They had, I think the vice chair of the BIA was there. It was all in favor of it. We had a city councilor there, another businessman there that was in favor of it, and they made a lot of positive comments. As we're going through there, didn't look bad. They had just 2 stalls. And yes, the washrooms are locked. And they told us the washrooms were locked, and they told us why. But I didn't, or I haven't, but I will do this. Haven't gone out to knock on a few of the businesses in the surrounding community, as Mr. Cooper had done, because we were getting the information sometimes secondhand. So I think we need to do that. Anybody wants to come with me, I'd be happy to take them. I will do that. We have people who are dying in the community. Could be, could be your nephew, your niece, grandchild. Because addiction there's no boundaries with addiction. There's absolutely none. And the only way I could even agree to this, if we put something in this city, the wraparound services have to be in that building and staffed prior to any safe injection site going in there. That's the only way I can agree to it. When they did a good job in Guelph for the wraparound services. In fact, I thought they did quite a good job in wraparound services, to be honest with you. But I will support this motion. And it's just, everybody says the same thing. We have to do something. Well, we need to do better than anybody else. Okay? It's not about thinking outside the box or outside the circle. It's thinking inside the box. And that's really, really what we need to do. Might turn out we can't find a site. The province may not fund a site, because we as a city certainly can't afford to fund that site. We can't. All right? So it's an issue, and it's a very divisive issue. But again, we have people dying in our community, and we need to be cognizant of that. But again, I will reserve my right as a councillor as we walk down this road, because there's a number of meetings and it's a lot of input in here on this page 29. If for something down the road I'm not comfortable with, I will then vote against it. But tonight I will vote in favor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, the first thing I want to do is to thank everybody who came tonight. I think that it's really important to have everybody's voice heard. And I'm really pleased that everyone came out and spoke so eloquently. So thank you once again to all of you for coming out. What I have learned in the last little while about addictions is what's really important to a person who is addicted, that they can make connections with people, that they're not isolated. And that was so evident when we were at Guelph, that connection of the addicted person was made with the people there, with the nurse who was there, with the nurse telling them or asking them, how are you today? How have you been feeling? Have you been having any problems? And they feel loved, cared for, important, and they're seen as a person. I think that really, really impacted on me, to have them have that kind of connection that would allow them then to be able to move forward and be more ready then to accept more help. And it has been mentioned, the wraparound services are really, really important. I have been a supporter of a CTS for quite some time, and I'm sure that's not a surprise to anybody here. When I went to my pharmacist to pick up some of my medications, he asked me about it, and he told me that recently 3 of his young men patients had died from overdoses. And these were not homeless, these were just young men. And I really feel strongly that we have to try and make those connections with people who are suffering from addictions. No one here is saying that a CTS is an answer to an opiate crisis. I think it was said tonight earlier, it's a tool. It's just one tool that we can use. Because we can't heal somebody who's dead. So let's keep them alive. Let's keep those connections going with them. Let's keep talking to them. Let's get more outreach workers out there. And let's see if we can't stop the tide of people dying from overdoses. I'm going to be supporting this motion.
Thank you. Councillor Wolf.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I also would like to thank everyone who's come out tonight. It's the commitment you have to our city and to making it a better place to live is admirable and really appreciated by, I'm sure, everyone on council. I've been listening to both sides of the argument for, I guess, over a year. I too went to Guelph and was very impressed. There, I went on the first trip, not the second. We spoke with the mayor. We spoke with the police who were in charge of drug enforcement, and to the peer workers. And from all of them, they were optimistic and positive about what was happening. None of them said there is no crime, drug-related crime in Guelph, or there are no more needles, but it hadn't increased, and in many cases it had got a bit better. Over a year ago, if you went downtown Guelph, you saw drug addicts, you saw on the streets, you found needles, and those things, just like here, right now we have people will tell you about the crime they've been subjected to, needles, all the different problems we have. And all I've found, would like to reassure people, is I truly believe that if we have a CTS in Cambridge, those things won't increase. Hopefully they'll decrease, but they won't increase. I sit on the library board, and we were doing research for the library about how to best deal with people who are coming in using our washrooms for shooting up drugs, etc. And we reached out to Hamilton. The Hamilton Library had a big problem until a CTS was opened up 10 minutes from the library. So from having, they'd had a couple of overdoses and they were having daily people using their washrooms for shooting up, it went down to no overdoses and a rare occasion, someone shooting up. Same thing with the Vancouver Library. When we checked with them, having a CTS within walking distance of that library solved the library's problems in terms of people using it for doing drugs. Recently, many of us on council went to Quebec City to FCM, which is a conference for mayors and councillors from across Canada. And one of the sessions had to do with the opioid crisis. And there they explained that we shouldn't be calling it the opioid crisis, we should be calling it the drug poisoning crisis, because that's what it is. We've had addiction for as long as we've had drugs through history, and we've had some overdoses. But this crisis is about drug poisoning. And if we have food poisoning, we have structures set up to deal with food poisoning. If we have water poisoning, as in Walkerton, we set up the structures to deal with that poisoning. But because this is drug poisoning and the stigma of people who use drugs, we haven't set up the structure to deal with the problem. And the CTS is that structure. It's allowing people to use the drug and hopefully not die if it's a poison drug. And as what's been said a couple of times, the CTS is just a tool that we can use to keep people alive, to make that connection with them. And I think it's just the first step, or maybe should just, if we, as Nicholas said, we need to urge our MPPs, our MPs, they're the level of government that have the money, that have the ability to set up drug rehab centers, to give more money to our hospitals, to put money into mental health, to put money into our school systems, into guidance counselors, to sports programs, to all the things that keep people off the streets, to make people feel good about themselves and stop the pain which starts the addiction. That was another point that people made. If you want to help with addiction, help with the pain. Find out where the pain is. That pain can be physical, but it's often emotional. Someone said, if you want to help us, love your children. And you know, we need to start at the beginning. We talk about the Icelandic model, where they put money into sports programs, drama programs, and gave parents the permission to leave work and be with their families. And in 10 years, they turned around their youth addiction stats. So all of these things we need to do.
Will you be wrapping up
Yes,
shortly? Thank
and
you.
CTS is to me one step, and a step that is sorely needed.
Thank you. Councillor Adshead.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I'm going to be supporting the motion because this is a consumption and treatment site, and like Councillor Mann was saying, I think it doesn't matter, maybe we can make it a treatment and consumption site, but we do need, I think we need the emphasis on there's a treatment with wraparound services. That's the key. I wouldn't support just a consumption site, but with consumption and treatment with wraparound services, I could support. I have confidence we have a citizen-led advisory committee that's going to be advising us on this. I think that's a really good step. This is a really controversial issue, as you can tell by the diverse opinions and beliefs. And thank you for all the delegates that came to speak tonight, but you can tell there's a lot of diverse opinions and beliefs. So I think we need guidance, and we need to research, and we need research and we need guidance to make the right decision. So I'm confident that the advisory committee will help us in that regard. And also we need updated information and results and research the best wraparound and treatment services. So we have an opportunity, I think, here to come up with something maybe a bit out of the box or something that's a bit different, something that could be more successful. So for that reason, and also too, there would be we're still keeping our interim control bylaw in the core areas. For those reasons, I can support the motion going forward.
Thank you. Councillor Liggett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I won't be supporting the motion. I don't think that's a surprise to anybody in the room or out there in TV land either. I have no faith in our police department, none whatsoever. They've abandoned us a long time ago. If this CTS goes through, I see nothing but problems. I'm not willing to destroy any neighborhood in this community. It's not just downtown, it's any neighborhood. I have read everything I can get my hands on, including the Supreme Court decision and what it was based on in those reports. There was major problems with that Supreme Court decision, and it was a failing of the federal government of their lawyers to bring the safety concerns of the community to the table, and they deserve to lose that. You know, there's no such thing as the unintended consequences here, because we all know what the consequences are, whether we go for it or not go for it. There's different consequences no matter what the decision is, negative consequences. And this isn't a trial. This isn't a trial we get to go back on. I mean, this is a permanent thing. And it's going to get worse. It's never going to get better. We may think it's going to get better, but it's not. Any of the communities that already have sites, the needle debris has not declined. It has only gotten worse. Deaths still go on. We're going to wallow in this. We're wallowing now in this, but we're going to drown. Our community will be lost. It's going to be lost for a long, long time. May not like what I've got to say, but it's what the community is saying, and I stand behind the community in this. I think they need to have a voice, and they need to have somebody around this horseshoe who is listening to what they're saying, who understands what they're saying, and who, I'm not saying that you're not listening to them, but no, I'm not. Don't talk into my ear. You don't like other people doing that to you. This has been very difficult for me as well. My ward. So, that's it.
Thank you. Councillor Mehta, this is your second and final time to speak.
Chip, I appreciate that. I do want to mention, I am glad Councillor Wolf had mentioned the Icelandic model. I do think a lot of that's very positive, and I do believe in having more programs for our youth and taking a proactive stance to so that people do stay out of these kind of situations. So I think that's great. I'd like to see more done with that. And I'm not going to be long-winded, but I'm just going to say again that I am concerned about the direction that we're going into. I am trying to be respectful because it is a passionate issue for me as well. So I'm trying to be respectful while taking a stance. Anyways, I am concerned that we are inviting the devil for breakfast, that we are, I am concerned about some of the unintended consequences that this could attract dealers. I am concerned about that. And I'm trying to be respectful, but it is a concern that I do have, specifically in the zone just outside the door around it, that you could see runners going back and forth, and they can say they're just trying the substance and that, but how do we know our deal's happening? How do we know that? So I think at the very least the committee should be having a look at that, and I'm sure they will, but it's a concern I've got, and I'll leave it at that, all right?
Thank you. Councillor Mann's our last speaker besides the chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I really appreciate the comments that I've heard around the table tonight, because I could flip-flop, and I hate flip-flopping because I can go with either side. But at the end of the day, and we heard it from many people who spoke tonight, that people are dying. And what value do you put on an individual's life? And can I do something to help that individual? And I think I have to look at it, and I still go back to my friendly amendment, that I don't like the word consumption. I still want treatment, and that's what I would always propose, is that it has to be a treatment facility, and I know it's going to be a consumption and treatment, but the facility has got to have treatment so that we can help people get out of this rut that they're in, because if they stay there, they have no hope. And the only thing we can do is give them the tools to try and get out of there. And I think we have got a responsibility to our community, the people of our community, the citizens that we are supposed to serve, the people who are addicted to opioids, the people who are dying in our community. We have a responsibility to do everything we can to help them. But I also think the federal and the provincial government have a responsibility, and I don't think they've stepped up to the plate the way we would like to see them. And I think we really need to put some pressure on them. They don't waste any time in downloading on the municipalities. I think it's time the municipalities kick back a little and say, we need to play hardball with you, because this is a national epidemic, and the federal and provincial government have a responsibility more so than what they've done. I know this motion, or I know this will come back to us for approval at a later time, so I reluctantly will support the motion. But again, my emphasis is always on treatment, because I want to see us save people, not lose people.
Thank you very much, and I will take the chair's privilege and wrap things up. I have heard from those for, those against a consumption site. What I have heard is a unanimous community asking about treatment. Let's go back to the issues that we're talking about tonight, and those are that the issues of addiction have many, many root causes. We've been blessed in this community to have the Waterloo Region Crime Prevention Council. I sat on it for 7 years before I was elected in 2014, and I'm your regional rep that continues to sit on that committee. And what we've been successful at in this community to give people hope and to try and prevent them from getting into issues with mental health and addiction problems is try and attack the root causes. And we need to give our individuals time in order to be able to look after those. Some of the root causes would be poverty, social exclusion, and a number of other things. Prevention is a big key issue, and I'm really hoping that the Community Wellness Advisory Committee can take things forward, like the Icelandic model that is certainly talked about from the Crime Prevention Council, that's been quite successful in problematic substance use in teens in other jurisdictions. I wanted also to talk about the drug poisoning issue. We are faced with an issue now that's unprecedented. Poisoning upon poisoning. And if we had the same number of issues with car accidents or other deaths, we would be making sure we could do everything possible to prevent those deaths, because in order for somebody to get well again and to get treatment, they have to stay alive. So we're talking about a consumption and treatment site with a capital T, and I refer back to the interim city manager, Jeff Wilmer's comments at the beginning of this evening's item that we're discussing now, and talking about all of the issues and how we're going to provide that wraparound service. When we visited Guelph, I'm a nurse by background, I know you know that, so I was able to speak to the nurses that were giving us this tour in probably a deeper way than others. And what they tell me is that the reason they were successful at bringing people in for treatment was because they offered consumption services. They said they had no ability or very little ability to bring them in to come into treatment without those relationships and without asking them about their health teaching situation. So it wasn't just that they were having their drugs consumed and out again. There was a lot of health teaching and service referral and linking them up with services at the time, which was helpful. This is not our jurisdiction. We've just heard from Councillor Mann and others. Public health services and health services are provided by the provincial government and the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care. And as much as we would love to be able to move forward with all of the services that would help prevent it, increased detox beds, rehab beds, mental health services, it's not our jurisdiction to pay for. And I am really hoping from all of the great ideas we've been hearing from our constituents and our residents that are researching a lot of great treatments, that you're taking this forward to your members of provincial parliament and the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care, because that's where the money comes from. That's where the ability to set up pilot projects for certain treatments can go. But I did want to say one last thing. For all of those, and I think I heard it from every one of you that wanted treatment, where are we going to provide that treatment? This isn't just a consumption site, it's a consumption and treatment service site that we're talking about tonight, and trying to find an area where we can send those that are addicted and sick to go in order to access these services. Funding, that really comes from the provincial government. Yesterday at Regional Council, we had an update from the Waterloo Region Integrated Drug Strategy. And so I spent some time talking to our public health department. I said, what can we do as a community here at the lower tier government to get some of these treatments forward? And what they told us is to rally and make sure that you network with the people that can make the decisions and make the funding happen. And that's really through your MPPs and the provincial government. We will support that here. I can hear that around the horseshoe here. We have to give our people hope. We have to make sure that we attack the root causes, that we're a caring community, that we have prevention programs, that we have youth programs that helps to keep our at-risk youth busy and engaged, and we have excellent models here in our community. So I'm going to be supporting this motion as well tonight. I believe that we need to fully get on board and start the work that we need to do and network with our other levels of government and other folks that can help us to move forward. So thank you so much. And we are going to have a poll vote. So I'm ready to call the question. Members of council?
And that recommendation is carried.
Thank you, everyone, for bearing with us. Members of council, we have a few items to wrap up very quickly. And may I also thank you for your respectful behavior tonight. And thank you for bearing with us. So we'll go back to the confirmatory bylaw. Councillor Adshay, you have the motion because we chose option 1 from the River Road. Could you please move forward? Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, second by Councillor Wolf, the introduction and consideration of bylaws as printed.
Thank you. All those in favor? And that's carried. We'll move forward with the confirmatory bylaw, and Councillor Armetta, I believe you have that motion.
Well, thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Montero, the confirmatory bylaw as printed.
Thank you. Members of council, I'll call the question. All those in favor? And that's carried. Councillor Mann, it's all up to you now.
Well, Madam Chair, I'm looking for a seconder. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Devine, that we adjourn now at 10:45.
Thank you very much, everybody.